Hello, good evening, and good day, everybody, and welcome back to the Ask Abhijit show. This is episode 345, and we are discussing what's going on in the war against Iran, the US Israeli war against Iran. That's what we're going to discuss today, and other things as well, as per your questions. I'll take questions from you from the super chat, as many as possible today. And before we do that, let's see who all is there in the live chat with us. I can see Sona Sandhuji, Harsh Patel, Raman Gill, Ritik Pawar, Mandar Kherkar, Pratar Dana, Geopolitical Dube from Indore. Good to see you, sir. Mehul Rajesh Babu from Kerala. Good to have you. Darshan Patel from Dieppe, Canada. Bonjour. Nirvana Shanks, San, how are you doing? Uh, Jnanesh, hello. Neeraj Bhardwaj, Aryansh Verma, good evening. Lalithananta, good evening. SKR 7733, good evening. Ayush Singh, Jai, yes, hello. Real Vladimir Putin says, is lockdown inevitable? We shall discuss that. Shri Hari Arun, namaste. Alka Shikari, namaste. Arun 211093, Ryan KC, Aryansh Chauhan from the UK. Good to have you, sir. P. Sudhir Kumar PSK. Happy birthday to you, P. Sudhir Kumar PSK. Vench Acharya SKR. Durandar 2, I haven't seen it yet. Samarth Pramanik. Nabarita Das. P. Sudhir Kumar once again. Happy birthday once again. Abhishek Shukla live. That's all right. Okay. Abhishek Shukla live says, sense your frustrations at Major General Raj. No, look, it's okay. Yes, I did this podcast with Major General Rajiv Narayanan ji, sir, on the Avara Musafir podcast. And now, as is natural, no two people can agree on everything, which is perfectly fine. Ankush Sharma Photography, namaskar. Who else do we have? S. Morgan, hello. Somi, hello. Somi from Jaipur, I think. Yes. Navodita Verma, namaskar. Sandesh Nale YT. Shishir Upadhyaya. Sangeeta Anthony, hello. Sandesh Nale once again. Who else do we have? Bin Salman, hello. Bin Salman. Heisenberg, hello. Priyanshi Sood, Om. SP Arush, hello. Really now, Miss Patel, namaste, ma'am. Geopolitical Dube from Indore once again. Samrat Shukla, hello. GHOTOOU, Ram Sarji. Shubham. Harapan guy from Mahenjadaro, hello, Shubham. Who else? Vikas Mishra, S7E Vinod. Somi from Jaipur. Ombe Kirikar, hello, good to have you. Groku 75, Anshu from the US. Good to see you. Good morning. Chirag Srinath. NC Penguin, hello. Samrat Shukla. Who has watched me over 1,000 hours. Well, that's incredible. Thank you so much. It's genuinely a privilege. Thank you indeed. Somi says, have I watched Casablanca? Yes, I've watched Casablanca. Yes, I have. Devasura 73821, etc. Hello. P. Sudhir Kumar, Tanmay Deshpande, Aryan, Kalk 673, Mukshitidi, Nitin Sharma, Real Vladimir Putin, everybody else. I won't be able to greet you all. Rano Nahapana is here. Well, Rano Nahapana, namaste. Okay, so before I get into the Q&As, let's examine what's happened since the last time we had a chat. We had this live stream, right? The last one was this last Sunday, wasn't it? So what's happened? So President Trump, the American President Shri Donald Trump G, gave an address to the nation early morning today, right? 6:30 a.m. or so India time. And the whole world was waiting to hear what Mr. Donald Trump would have to say about this. Is he going to, people are wondering, is he going to end the war? Is he going to announce a ceasefire? Is he going to announce an escalation? Is he going to announce that he's withdrawing from NATO? I was on Republic TV yesterday, 8 p.m. with Arnab Goswami, and that's what we were discussing. That's what Arnab was wondering about. That's what everyone was wondering about. That what is Trump going to speak about? Right? So, Mr. Trump gave his speech, his address to the nation. It was like 15, 20 minutes, right? And nothing new, nothing at all. It's like he was repeating what he had tweeted in the past, right? And absolutely nothing in it. He tried to justify his war against Iran. He's as always said that he is winning. It's gonna take like 2-3 weeks more. I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks more. And his Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said that they're gonna bomb Iran back to the Stone Age. I think Trump also said that in the speech. And yeah, so the war goes on. I suppose the war goes on. He has made so many flip flops, Donald Trump, over the past month. So many flip flops in terms of the objectives of the war. So it doesn't look like this war is ending anytime soon. So let's take a look at, as always, a few a few tweets that will help us understand what's going on. So this is from today morning. Breaking: President Donald Trump of the US says that the US will leave Iran within 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. That's stretching the White House's initial guidance of 4 to 6 weeks war. So clearly, it's overstretching the budget or the time allocation that they had in mind earlier. When they started the war, I think they were laboring under the delusion that the war will be over in 48 hours. But clearly, that's not happened. So that's about Trump. This is from a tweet from the White House. For years, everyone has said that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons, but in the end, those are just words if you're not willing to take action when the time comes. So Trump is taking action. It's not just words with Trump, it's all actions according to him. Let's see what actions he's able to take about Iran and nuclear weapons. Now you have Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, who says back to the Stone Age. So they are promising that they're going to bomb Iran back to the Stone Age. What happened to liberating the people of Iran? Wasn't the agenda allegedly to liberate the people of Iran from this horrible regime of the Ayatollahs? So if you're going to bomb that nation back to the Stone Age, if you're going to destroy schools with children in it, if you're going to bomb universities, how exactly are you liberating the people? It's not about liberation then, right? Trump seems to be very gleefully talking about bombing Iran back to the Stone Age. And this guy, Hegseth, back to the Stone Age. So they are promising they're going to send Iran back to the Stone Age. They're going to bomb the hell out of Iran over the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. That's what they are promising. And yet they are not able. They're not able to force Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz. Trump is pleading to the Europeans and other nations. You know what? You need to come in and open the Strait of Hormuz if you want the oil. Because we Americans, we have our own oil. But it's you Europeans and you other nations who want oil from the Strait of Hormuz. So you need to come in and force Iran to open it. Which means he wants to drag more nations into the war. And that's where we start talking about something very bad, which is World War III. So that's by Pete Hegseth. Now, what do we have? Yeah, this is again from earlier today. President Trump of the US says that the US is going to hit Iran extremely hard over the next 2, 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages. He seems to be very pleased about bombing a nation to the Stone Age. Right, so that's his promise. Let's see how that goes. What else? This is from yesterday. US President Donald Trump threatens to halt weapons supplies to Ukraine unless European countries agree to join a coalition to secure the Strait of Hormuz. Right. So once again, he is issuing threats that I'm going to stop weapons supplies to Ukraine unless European nations join a coalition to secure, essentially to fight against Iran in the Persian Gulf region, the Arabian Sea region, the Strait of Hormuz region, and force Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz. Does Trump imagine that if the US, with its aircraft carriers and its military might, was unable to force Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz, does he imagine that the European nations will be able to make this happen? It's impossible. If the US can't do it, the Europeans certainly can't do it. So Trump just wants more nations to join the war. He seems to be intent on dragging the world into World War III. Because if more European nations join in, then I suppose China and Russia will have a very, very good incentive, very strong incentive to join in more actively than what they are doing right now. Okay, what else? Congress. So this is a tweet. This is a piece of news from 2023. See, Trump has been complaining about NATO, hasn't he? Trump has been complaining about NATO. what's happened is that there's a bunch of NATO nations that have refused to give the United States permission to use military bases in those nations as part of the war against Iran. And they have also refused to allow their airspace to be used by the US in connection with the war against Iran. Which nations are these? Well, you have Italy, you have France, you have Spain, you have Poland, you have Greece, and I'm sure there's more nations. So all these nations have refused permission to the US to use their airspace or their military bases as staging posts or transit areas for participating in the war against Iran. So Trump is extremely upset about this matter. Let me try and find some more tweets. I'm sure there is something more. Give me a second. So yeah, the Americans are extremely upset with the Europeans that they are not behaving like good, nice vassals. Okay, let me put up a couple more tweets here. Give me a second. There's one more here. And there's one more here. Okay, that's gonna load, and another one is gonna load. Okay. So, what have we here? So this is a tweet from the White House. Is it from the White House? No, it's from the Department of State. Secretary, please be silent, sir. Okay. So Secretary Rubio says, why are we in NATO? You have to ask that question. Why is the United States in NATO? You have to ask that question. Why does the US send trillions of dollars and have all of these American forces stationed in the region when in America's time of need, the US is not allowed to use those bases? That is the question he's asking. Well, Mr. Rubio, the United States pays for the privilege of occupying Europe militarily and projecting power all the way up to Russia's doorstep. So the US is getting that incredible access all across Western Europe. It's able to put bombs, weapons, arms, ammunition, missiles, nuclear weapons right at Russia's doorstep because it is part of NATO. So shouldn't the US pay for the privilege, right? And in exchange for that, NATO nations, they purchase American weapons. And Trump has already forced the NATO nations to double their contribution to the alliance by 2030, and they've agreed, right? So the question is, why are the Americans complaining? I mean, according to the NATO charter, the NATO nations aren't under any obligation to allow America access to their bases and their airspace to fight a war that does not involve NATO in any shape or form, right? So that's what the Americans are complaining about, right? That's what they're complaining about. Now we have this interesting tweet from Ed Davey. He's the leader of the Liberal Democrats in the UK. It's a political party in the UK. Here's what he says. He says that Trump wants to rip up NATO because the UK refuses to be dragged into this illegal war, and the other NATO nations refuse to be dragged into this illegal war. And then he says something very interesting. Threats to NATO today become threats to Trident tomorrow. The UK can't rely on Trump for UK's national security. Britain needs a truly independent nuclear deterrent committed to NATO defense. So here's the deal. The UK, Britain, has a number of nuclear submarines, and these nuclear submarines are part of UK's nuclear deterrent. The UK has a number of nuclear warheads, okay? And these warheads, they are mated to these Trident missiles, ballistic missiles, that are placed inside these submarines. Now, the Trident missiles are American missiles, okay? So British bombs are mated to American missiles that are placed inside British submarines. But the missiles are American. You see, Britain doesn't have missiles of its own. It was made to dismantle its rocket program, space program, missile program decades ago. So they don't have their own missiles. These are American missiles. And guess who has the big red button? On whose desk does the big red button sit? Does it sit on the desk of Mr. Keir Starmer in 10 Downing Street in London? No, no, no. The big red button sits in the Oval Office on the desk of the American president, which means the UK's nuclear deterrent is a deterrent only in name. It's controlled by the US. This is something I have been saying for years over here on this show, haven't I? And here you have official confirmation of this from the leader of a British political party, that the British nuclear deterrent is not really a nuclear deterrent. It's actually controlled by the United States, not by the UK. Isn't that interesting? Right? Should I say, I told you so? Right? Okay, so there is that. Now, what else is going on? Yeah, now we were talking about NATO, right? That the Americans are complaining over here that why are we in NATO? So in 2023, the US Congress approved a bill barring any American president from unilaterally withdrawing from NATO, which means Trump can't withdraw from NATO even if he wants to. And guess who? Guess who participated and voted for the bill? It was Marco Rubio himself. So Rubio here is complaining, why are we in NATO? And it was Rubio himself who participated in passing this bill that prevents any American president from unilaterally withdrawing from NATO. Did Mr. Rubio forget that very conveniently? So these threats that the Americans are making, they just bluff. They are simply bluff, aren't they? Rubio himself has tweeted this. No US president should be able to withdraw from NATO without Senate approval. So they will need a majority in the Senate in order to be able to withdraw from NATO. I think the Republicans currently have a majority in the Senate, but let's see how things go, yeah? So there is this that's going on. What else do we have? And this is interesting. This is the Italian Prime Minister, Madame Giorgia Meloni, and she has made this really surprising statement. I accuse Israel of crossing the red line. I condemn the massacre of Palestinian civilians, and I announce that Italy will support European sanctions against Israel. That's an incredible statement, right? Incredible statement from Madame Meloni. So looks like the Europeans don't want to participate in this war, and the sentiment in Europe seems to be turning against Israel for some reason. Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, what else? There's another interesting piece of news. UK security officials have started withholding intelligence from the US due to Trump's erratic behavior. The British officials fear that British secrets will not remain classified, as the American president has no compulsion about screwing over America's allies. So there's no trust now. No one trusts Trump. No one trusts the US. None of the vassals trusts the United Nations anymore, right? Chaotic foreign policy, repeated criticism of Keir Starmer, and so on. A decades-long intelligence relationship has been plunged into uncertainty after Washington's threats to Greenland, its ambition to interfere in European politics, and public outrage over Britain's refusal to join the American war against Iran. Right. So there's this situation where the American vassals are losing trust in the US, and they are starting to withhold information and intelligence from the Americans. Here's an interesting piece of news. After a 7-year hiatus, this is 2026, 7 years means 2019. So after a 7-year hiatus, India is about to import its first Iranian oil. Yeah? India is about to import its first Iranian oil at $100 roughly a barrel. Quite the achievement in Washington for the long-term strength of the economic and financial sanctions regime. Well, that's an interesting piece of news. Let's see how that goes. Yeah, let's see how that goes. Now, here's one more piece of news that's not related, that's not connected to the war, but nevertheless, it's important for India. France refuses Rafale source codes to India, triggering major blow to New Delhi's air power independence strategy. So the news, it was from March 31st. Today is April the 2nd. So Paris has reportedly denied India access to the Rafale fighters' core source codes, preventing New Delhi from independently modifying the Thales ASA radar, the mission computer, and the electronic warfare suite. Um, so, French authorities confirmed that New Delhi will not receive access to the Rafale fighters' core source codes, a refusal that directly impacts India's ability to independently modify critical electronic and electronic warfare systems. So, if India pays a tremendous amount of money to acquire these fighter planes, should India not have the complete authority and complete power to change anything in the aircraft? Once we purchase them, they should be ours, right? But no, you purchase them, but you still can't modify everything. Some things you will need for French help every time to modify. And each time you need French help, they will ask for money. That's what the French want to do. This is the kind of behavior that you typically see from the Americans. And look, it's a French aircraft. The French have the right to, impose whatever conditions they want. But then India should have the right, if India is sensible, to not buy these aircraft. The French seem to think that since India has bought 36 or whatever Rafales, that's why it's almost a done deal that India will have to buy more. And that's why they think that they can now arm twist India and extract more concessions from India. Right? So the French authorities say that the software architecture is highly sensitive and it's closely guarded technology developed over many years, and that's why they cannot part with it. They can't share it with the Indians. And India is proposing to acquire up to 114 more Rafale fighters under the MRFA program. And this deal is estimated at approximately 36 billion American dollars. Yeah. One of the largest combat aviation procurements in modern defense history. And one French report stated unequivocally, India will not receive sensitive source codes for Rafale's radar and electronic warfare suite. France will retain control over core software despite technology transfer and local production cooperation. Okay. So source code control determines whether India can independently integrate indigenous weapons such as the Astra, beyond visual range missile, or potentially the BrahMos, air-launched cruise missile, without recurring approval cycles from France and from Dassault Aviation and other French defense firms. So that's the issue. And at the same time, the Russians have proposed to sell the Sukhoi 57 fifth generation fighter plane to India and provide full source code access to India, including design documentation and customization authority. Right? So that's the question. India is in this situation now. India has to make a decision. What does India do? Does India give in to French arm twisting? Or does India actually go ahead and say no to France and purchase Sukhoi 57s? So one more new aircraft into India's inventory. Okay. But it's a Sukhoi, and it's in some ways something that integrates with India's Sukhoi 30 fighter planes. So it's not going to be a tremendously different aircraft. I'm sure some components will be similar, and I'm sure you can use the same production line for that was used for Sukhoi 30s to manufacture Sukhoi 57s. And then there's the question of the Russians. The Russians themselves haven't been extremely reliable. Okay. We've had issues with the Russians when it comes to the FGF fighter plane program, which was the precursor to the Sukhoi 57. We've had issues with the Russians about spare parts of various arms systems. We've had issues with the Russians about the aircraft carrier that they sold to us, Admiral Gorshkov. So what does India do? That's the question. India is currently, the number of squadrons, fighter plane squadrons that we have, they are way below what we should have, right? The number of squadrons we should have. I don't know, we have 29 or 30 or 31 squadrons, and we should have, I don't know what number, 39, 40, whatever the number is, right? So that is the dilemma India is in. It's been years and years we've been talking about purchasing or buying or manufacturing or whatever, and we are making no progress whatsoever. So what should India do is the question. I think pay attention to what's happening in Iran. Are fighter planes dominating the skies? No. Fighter planes are not dominating the skies. Fighter planes are being shot down. F-35 fighter planes, F-15 fighter planes, all kind of fighter planes have been shot down by the Iranians. Iranian fighter planes have been shot down by the Americans. And what is doing the shooting down? It's not fighter plane shooting down fighter plane. It's missiles shooting down fighter planes. And what is doing the most destruction in the war? It's drones and missiles. So what India should do is focus on India's AMCA. Don't buy the Rafale, don't buy the Sukhoi, or maybe buy a bunch of Sukhois, whatever. But focus on the AMCA, focus on jet engines. And if the AMCA comes into production in a decade from now, okay. In the meanwhile, India should focus on drones and missiles, various kinds of missiles. India should build up a stockpile of more than 1 million drones of various kinds and more than 10, 20, 30,000 missiles of various kinds, including cruise missiles, supersonic, hypersonic, subsonic cruise missiles, ballistic missiles. That's what India should do. Because the wars of the future are going to be fought with drones and missiles, not with fighter planes. Fighter planes are obsolete now. They're becoming more and more obsolete, just like aircraft carriers. So maybe and India should also focus on unmanned combat aerial vehicles like the Ghatak. This is the future of aerial warfare, not fighter planes. I think India's mindset is still stuck in the 20th century. Right? So that's the thing. That's what I think India should do. India should learn the lessons of the wars others are fighting. We should not wait for us having to fight a war and then learn some lessons. No, learn the lessons that are that are visible, that can be learned from other people's wars and other people's mistakes. So that's what India needs to do. Lots and lots of drones of various kinds, including Indian versions of the Shahed or whatever, other drones, and missiles of various kinds, including, and India should not think of ballistic missiles as something that's used to deliver the nuclear deterrent. No, ballistic missiles should be used for delivering conventional munitions also. That's why India needs to have tens of thousands of missiles. See how many missiles the Americans and Israelis and the Iranians have used up in the just 1 month of war. Thousands, I suppose. Thousands. So if India has to fight a war, a two-front war, China and Pakistan, we're going to have to shoot thousands of missiles every month. So I think India should have a stockpile of 100,000 missiles at least, and several million drones. That's what India needs to do. Quantity has a quality of its own. Okay, anyway, so that is what's going on. India is facing challenges. India is facing challenges when it comes to energy. The Strait of Hormuz is closed, selectively closed. Some tankers, oil tankers, are being allowed to cross. The Iranians are allowing oil tankers to cross the Strait of Hormuz if they are going to India. But there's also the threat that the Strait of Bab al-Mandeb could also be closed by the Houthis, because the Houthis are allied with Iran. And if Iran faces more punishment by the Americans and Israelis, they will activate the Houthis, who will close the Strait of Bab al-Mandeb. And then the oil that's coming into India from Russia will also stop. Then what do we do? The Ukrainians have destroyed or damaged significantly at least 3 or 4 Russian ports, which are at the forefront of Russia's oil exports. So Russia's capacity to export oil has dropped by about 40%. And Russia is just sitting and taking the punishment. So super complicated situation right now. The war in the Gulf region and the war in Ukraine are now interconnected. And India could face India, China, Russia, not Russia, India, China, Japan, other nations could face potentially, if the war goes on, shortages of fuel, whether it is oil, which gives rise to diesel, petrol, kerosene, jet fuel, etc., and also cooking oil, cooking gas. And I am aware of several restaurants in large cities in India that have already shut down because of a shortage of gas, right? So, yeah, that is the situation. The longer this war goes on, the more problematic it's going to be for the entire world. But can the US end the war? The US isn't in a position to end the war. Will the Israelis allow the US to end the war? And if the US ends the war in such a way that it has to withdraw militarily from West Asia, then Iran becomes the regional hegemon. Even if Iran is damaged pounded, devastated, it still has the ability to destroy all the nations in the region. And that means that Iran can then impose its will on the Gulf nations if the Americans have to withdraw. And then what happens? These Gulf nations are oil producing nations, and Iran will demand that they sell oil and do transactions of oil in non-dollar currencies. And that's a disaster for the US. That's why the US cannot withdraw right now from the war. So whatever Trump says, he has dug a hole for himself, a deep hole for himself. And I don't see how he's going to extricate himself out of this. He's going to get more and more desperate the next 2-3 weeks if things don't change. So that's where we are. Okay, that's my analysis. Okay, now let's take some questions. What questions do we have? Harsh Patel says, 2 questions. How difficult would it be for Iran to develop a missile with a range of 6,000 plus miles? Hypothetically, what would happen if Iran managed to target a major US city during this war? Okay, miles to kilometers. What's 1.5, 1.6? What is it? So 6,000 times 60. So it's about 9,000, 10,000 kilometers you're talking about. How difficult would it be for Iran to develop a missile of that range? So right now, the Iranians seem to have missiles of 2 to 4,000 kilometer range. Now, understand this one thing, okay, about ballistic missiles. A ballistic missile doesn't have a set range. A ballistic missile, let's say it has a stated range of 2,000 kilometers, hypothetically, okay, and a payload capacity of, let's say, 1 ton. Okay, let's say 1 ton payload capacity, which means it can have a warhead or multiple warheads that cumulatively have a weight of 1 ton, hypothetically. And with that payload, the missile can travel 2,000 kilometers. But what if I cut down the payload from 1,000 kilograms to 100 kilograms? 90% reduction. Then the range increases, right? You may be able to almost potentially double the range by reducing the payload. And all it takes to have an even longer range is more propellant, more fuel. And if you have good engineers, it's not that hard to do that. Of course, you've got to test the missiles, right? And the Iranians have been testing it. They've done a lot of tests in the past month. So I don't think it is very difficult for Iran to develop missiles with much longer ranges. They currently have missiles that can target Diego Garcia, which is about 4,000 kilometers away from the Iranian coastline, which means that Iran can, if they want, they can target any city within Western Europe. Okay. Now, if you want to cross the Atlantic, hypothetically, that's what, another 3,000, 4,000 kilometers. So it's about 8,000. Yeah. So I don't think it is very difficult for Iran to do this. Now, what would happen if Iran managed to target a major US city during this war? Well, Iran isn't crazy enough to do that. Iran is a very rational nation, as we have seen from their behavior during this war. So this war has gone on for a month, and Iran has taken no rash steps. They've made no rash actions, crazy actions. Whatever they have been doing in retaliation and in response to escalations and provocations by the US and by Israel. Understand who started this war, and this is just a hard fact, okay? It's not my opinion. Who started the war? It is Israel and the US that started the war. Israel did not hit first. Iran did not hit first. Iran did not do the first strike. It was Israel and the US that did the first strikes, and then Iran responded. And then when the Americans destroyed a desalination plant in Kashmir Island, the Iranians responded with desalination of destruction of a desalination plant near Fujairah. When the Americans and Israelis struck oil reservoirs, oil depots, the Iranians did the same thing. So they are doing tit for tat, but they are not going crazy. When the Americans destroyed an Iranian school with 170 little children in it, the Iranians did not do something like that, right? The Americans have hit Iranian nuclear facilities. Iran thus far has not targeted Dimona in Israel. They have threatened Dimona, but not targeted it directly. So Iran has been very, 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 you could say, responsible, if that word can be used, in this war. And I don't think they'll do something as stupid as targeting a major US city. But if they do it, then I suppose if they target a major US city, hypothetically, which they will never do, but if they do it, I think then Trump may unleash more punitive actions, such as the forbidden weapons, possibly. Ritik Pawar says, in this war, who is winning and who is losing so far? I did a long analysis. I hope that gave you the answer that nobody is winning, nobody is losing right now. You could say Iran is taking a tremendous amount of damage, but so you can say that the Americans and Israelis are they are tactically doing great, but strategically it's Iran that's winning. See, what is victory for Iran? The survival of the nation and the survival of the regime of the Ayatollahs. If that happens, Iran has won. The Americans and Israelis, they came in with an objective of destroying Iran and doing a regime change. That's what they've said on the first day of the war. Now that the tunes have changed. Now the story is that the Americans want complete destruction of Iran's nuclear program, complete destruction of Iran's drone capabilities, missile capabilities, and the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. If the Americans can't achieve these things, well, they haven't won. They have actually failed in achieving their objectives. So I think Iran currently, against all odds, you could say it's succeeding thus far. Yeah. Iran, see, we in India talk about fighting a two-front war, two and a half front war. That's what we're worried about. Iran is fighting a 7, 8, 9 front war at the same time. It's fighting all these nations at the same time, and it's still on top. Yeah. They are taking obviously tremendous damage. The amount of damage they've taken will cost them maybe hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe trillions of dollars to undo, repair. Okay, it will take decades to do that, and yet it's Iran that is actually, succeeding in what it wants to do, and it's the Americans and Israelis who are not able to achieve what they want. Mandar Kirkar says, does the deep state think it's time for World War III? Well, it depends. So, like I said, World War III means a lot more nations getting involved in this matter, right? In this war. Trump is trying to drag the Europeans into the war. At some point in time, he may even activate Pakistan. So it looks like Trump wants more nations to join the war. If the European nations join the war, it means that Russia and China may also potentially consider very strongly joining the war, right? It may lead to severe escalations, not just in the Persian Gulf region, also in Ukraine potentially, because all the options that the Americans and Israelis have on the table, Putin also has those options on the table vis-a-vis Ukraine. So if the Americans escalate, if Trump drags more nations into the war, then there could be massive escalations, and that is what you could call World War III. I hope it doesn't happen, but we are close to it. We're not very far away from it. Arun has become a new member. Thank you very much, Arun, and welcome to the channel's membership. Thank you. Chirag Srinath says, a slightly off-topic question. What extent did the Afghan war, along with the Perestroika glasnost and the US-led arms race following the Star Wars program, contribute to the collapse of the USSR? There's a lot of factors that caused the collapse of the USSR. There's no one factor that you can point out. But the Afghan war was definitely a very major setback for the USSR. They also seem to have thought that they'll just walk into Afghanistan and just take over the nation. And they fought there for close to a decade. Yeah. And eventually they had to retreat without achieving any of their objectives. And that was a huge blow to the morale of the nation, to the prestige of the nation. And it definitely contributed it was one of the contributing factors to the collapse of the USSR. Because see, for such a gigantic nation to remain unified, the central government, the Politburo, it needs to show that it is successful in what it does. And if it is humiliated by a small ragtag nation like Afghanistan, according to them, then the other states that are part of the USSR, they will be emboldened to seek more autonomy and seek independence, because it's clear that the nation doesn't have a high quality military and so on. So there was one contributing factor. Perestroika glasnost was another big contributing factor because uh, it for the first time allowed criticism of the government. Okay, officially, perestroika and glasnost was about openness. It was about self criticism. It was about admitting responsibility for shortcomings and so on. So that's when, for the first time, you had open criticism of the government, people pointing fingers and pointing out the shortcomings and mistakes of the government, and overall that caused a decline in the morale of the nation, a decline in people's confidence in their leadership in their nation, and that permeates down all the way to every level of society, including the bureaucracy, including the administrative sector, including the military. And when you have this overall uh, you know uh, low confidence situation in a nation, it makes it way more easy for the nation to fracture if it's such a large nation. US led arms race, all these things they contributed in a variety of ways. Chernobyl in a small way contributed, but overall it was the decline in the standards in the USSR from the 1960s all the way to the late 1980s and 1990s that caused the decline and eventual dissolution of the USSR. Vixka Gola, thank you very much, Vixka Gola. Vix Kagola says, there's an intense misinformation campaign carried out in this war. What's your opinion on the impact on countries like UAE? Damage assessment, please. Misinformation campaign, all media has some element of misinformation. All media, all news is propaganda. Please understand that. If you imagine that any news channel is 100% unbiased and balanced and neutral, if you imagine that, then you are living in La La Land. Everyone has some bias. I am biased, by the way. I am the first to say this. I am not a neutral person. I am biased. I am not biased towards the US. I'm not biased towards Israel. I'm not biased towards China. I'm not biased towards Russia. I'm not biased towards Iran. I am biased towards India. And everything I say to you, you have to understand that I carry some bias in me. I am biased towards my nation and my civilization. Everybody is biased, but at least I admit it openly, right? Most of your analysts and journalists and experts, they will pretend to be neutral. They all are biased in some way or the other. Some of them may have unknown biases that they are not aware of within themselves, and some of them may actually be hypothetically paid to push certain kinds of agendas and propaganda. And when it comes to foreign media, I'm talking about Indian media also, okay? But when it comes to foreign media, whether it's BBC, whether it's CNN, whether it is CCTN, whether it is Deutsche Welle, whatever it is, all these whether it's New York Times, whether it is the Guardian, whether it is whatever, these are all propaganda outlets. Even RT, even Sputnik, everything is propaganda. Everyone is pushing their own agenda. If you don't understand this, then you're going to be very badly misled. If you imagine that the news that you're reading or watching is the truth. No, it's not. And the Indian media is a very low quality media overall. Not all. Some of them are good, of course, but overall, most of them are super mediocre. Most of them don't even understand what journalistic best practices are. Okay, if the BBC and CNN said something, it doesn't mean it's the truth. Some of them don't understand that. I mean, very surprising and very shocking for me to realize this. Some of them don't understand that if the BBC reports something or the CNN reports something, it doesn't mean it's the truth. And you don't start repeating it in the Indian media. But most Indian media outlets simply regurgitate, simply repeat the talking points of the Western media. That way, there's no need to do research of your own. Just watch the news on BBC, then come and speak in Hindi or whatever language, the same things. And then you look so informed and such an expert. So that is the deal. So there is definitely a massive, very intense misinformation propaganda campaign being carried out on this war, not just in mainstream media, also on social media. Social media platforms are biased. Social media platforms have algorithms that suppress certain kinds of news. There are various nations that have imposed tremendous censorship of news blackouts. In some countries right now, if you are living there, you are not allowed to take a video of what's happening. So there's a tremendous amount of misinformation out there. It's very hard to know what's actually happening. The first 2 3 days of the war, it was very clear what was happening based on the reports on Twitter, and then suddenly all the reports disappeared. You know. So yeah, what's my opinion on the impact on nations like the UAE? Well, for the UAE, it's a difficult time. Okay, let's take the UAE as an example. The UAE is this small nation, very friendly towards India, very good nation. About 60% of the population of the UAE is from the subcontinent. About 40% of the population of the UAE is of Indian origin. They are not citizens, but they live there. So the UAE has, well, the two major cities or the two major emirates in the UAE are Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi's economic model is mainly oil. They have the Abu Dhabi National Oil Corporation, ADNOC, which is a major oil exporter. And then Dubai has a totally different economic model. Dubai doesn't have much oil. So Dubai has positioned itself as a resort city. It's a gigantic resort, okay, for high net worth individuals, rich people, wealthy people. So they well, if you are a wealthy person and you can afford to live in the city, they welcome you with open arms. So all the residents of Dubai are wealthy people, but the majority of the population of Dubai is actually the workers. So in a resort, you may have 15 guests, but you may have 200 employees who service the guests, who give whatever services that the guests require. So for 10 or 15 guests, you need 200 employees. So that sort of thing you have in Dubai. It's a massive resort. Now, when there's a war and the American promise of military protection turns out to be an illusion, and you have drones flying in and hitting hotels that are hosting American armed forces personnel, and you have some casualties, then the high net worth individuals, they will all flee the city, right? So a lot of people have left Dubai apparently, especially ultra rich people. There's a lot of people who have not left Dubai also, who are still staying on. Okay, but the longer the war lasts, and the longer there is this air of uncertainty and potential military activity, uh, the longer this lasts, the more unviable this economic model will become. So for Abu Dhabi, it will be fine because they can keep on selling oil. For Dubai, it's going to be a disaster if this goes on for 6 months, 1 year, or whatever. Right? But overall, Iran is not indiscriminately bombed Abu Dhabi or Dubai. They've only hit military targets and hotels where allegedly American military personnel were staying. Okay. Honey says, what happens if the Gulf nations stop supporting the US war? Can it backstab the US by giving US army targets and locations to Iran to end the war? Is it possible? Iran doesn't need any information from the Gulf nations. Why does Iran need information from the Gulf nations? You can open Google Maps and see the locations of the American bases in the Gulf region. You don't need information from the Gulf nations, right? The American military bases are very visible from satellites, from even free satellite imagery like Google Maps or Google Earth. And the Iranians have access to high quality Chinese military satellite imagery in almost real time. So Iran knows exactly what's happening and what is where. They know exactly where the radars are. They've taken out a number of very, very expensive and valuable radars. They know exactly where the American refueling aircraft are. They know exactly where the American AWACS aerial radar aircraft were stationed. And they've done pinpoint strikes on these things. So why does Iran need any information about targets and locations from the Gulf nations? And the Gulf nations won't do it. They are not stupid. They are not suicidal, right? They won't do it. They have some sense. Okay. So that's not going to happen. Now, what happens if the Gulf nations stop supporting the US war? How can they stop supporting the US war? They have already given the Americans bases in their territory. They can't ask the Americans to leave, but they don't have to ask the Americans to leave because the Iranians have already destroyed the bases or rendered them mostly inoperable. So essentially, 1 month into the conflict, it's almost a certainty that most, if not all, of the American military bases in the region have been destroyed. The Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, one of the biggest naval installations in the region, has been devastated by Iranian missiles and drones. Right? And so the same applies to other American military installations in the region. So I don't think the Gulf nations need to stop supporting the US. The US is being pushed out of the region by Iranian strikes. Ranu Nahapana says, who was Mahakshatrap Ishwar Sen related to Sakas? I am not aware of who this was. Ishwar Sen. Mahakshatrap Ishwar Sen. I don't remember this name. I don't think I've come across this name. When it comes to Mahakshatrapas, I know about Nahapana, I know of Chashtana, I know of Rudradaman, and other Mahakshatrapas. I am not aware of Ishwar Sen. Sorry. Warrior says, is India preparing for a military operation? There have been serious CCS meetings and siren testings. All three military leaders are visiting temples. Look, I'm a civilian. I am not involved in any shape or form in the Indian government, in the Indian military, or in the Indian intelligence services. So I am not aware of whether India is preparing for any kind of military operation. I would say that currently the situation is tense. There is a war that's going on in our backyard, unfortunately, and that war could escalate. Yeah. We know that Pakistan is a rogue nation. It's a terrorist nation. Pakistan and Afghanistan have an ongoing conflict going on, right? So we have to be very alert right now. Pakistan is a treacherous nation. We have to be very alert. And that's why I'm sure the government of India is conducting routine precautionary measures and so on. Maybe they're testing out sirens just to make sure that everything is operational in case something is needed. Military leaders visiting temples. Well, I don't know anything about that. It's good that military leaders visit temples. I have nothing against that. Of course, I welcome that. But I don't know if it is an indicator of something that's going to happen. So the answer is I am not aware of what's going on. Opupali says, analyze that if Iran wins, petrodollar ends, US economic might ends, less money to spend on military hard power. In total decrease in Taiwan, South Korea falls, China, North Korea are waiting for the right moment. Okay. Let's say hypothetically Iran wins. So what is the definition of an Iranian victory? The definition of an Iranian victory is that Iran's government continues to exist. Iran's nuclear facilities are not destroyed. Nuclear capabilities are not destroyed. Iran's drone stockpile is not destroyed. Iran's missile stockpile is not destroyed. They continue to have the ability to use drones and missiles whenever they want. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. And number three, the Americans, they lose all their military bases in the region because Iran has destroyed them. So then how does the US return to the region with military force when they have no military bases that survive? If you want to station fighter planes, drones, radars, military personnel somewhere, you need military bases. You can't put them in a city, right? And if the Iranians have destroyed your military bases, it means the Americans can't set up operations there, which means that they lose their ability to project power in the region, in the Gulf region. That is the definition of an Iranian victory. Strait of Hormuz also remains closed. So if this happens and the Americans withdraw or are forced to withdraw from the Gulf region. And then what happens is that even if Iran is very badly devastated, it is still the most powerful nation in the region because it still has maybe 1 lakh drones and maybe several thousand missiles. So nobody dares to speak against Iran or do anything against Iran then. In that situation, what Iran can do is it can demand that every Gulf nation, whenever it does oil transactions, it does those oil transactions in a non-US dollar currency, maybe Chinese yuan. If that happens, the petrodollar system starts collapsing. Okay? If the petrodollar system starts collapsing, the US dollar loses value rapidly. I don't know rapidly or not, maybe over a course of 2-3 years. If that happens, the US obviously has less money to spend on everything, including power projection capabilities, military hard power, salaries, blah, 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 all that stuff. Then what does the US do? And in the meanwhile, China learns all the lessons of this war. It bulks up its massive stockpiles of missiles and drones. China has an enormous military industrial complex. They can churn out missiles and drones and submarines and ships like sausages. So maybe let's say China stockpiles millions of drones and tens of thousands of missiles. And then Xi Jinping says, okay, move on Taiwan. What happens? What can the US do? Nothing much. China wins. Taiwan may be destroyed perhaps. Okay. But China still gets, gets a possession of the island, let's say. And if China makes a move on Taiwan, the Americans will force Japan and South Korea to get into a war with China, which means now we have a major war in that region. Right? So the question is China willing to take that risk of going to war with Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan, and the US at the same time? That starts sounding like World War III once again, right? So yeah, these are all very dangerous situations if they happen. But just by winning this war, Iran can start the process of collapsing the petrodollar system and start the downward fall of the US dollar in terms of value. Aman Sharma says, I am a software engineer and I want to create a software that can go global and useful to the country. In which area should I research? Thanks for guiding. I don't know. You have to analyze the business landscape very, very carefully. See, if you want to create a software, so okay, you're a software engineer, you have the skills, you need to choose, you don't forget about the platform and forget about all that. Forget about the technology that they'll use to create the software. You have to ask yourself, do you want to create a web app? Do you want to create a mobile app? Do you want to create a SaaS? I don't know how viable SaaS is in today's AI agentic environment. Okay. And you want a software that is popular, it goes global, it's useful for the country. So you have to decide what niche you want to be in. Okay. If it goes global, it means it will be very popular. So decide what it is, what does it take for a software or a product to become popular globally. And if it's something that will become popular globally, how can it help the country? So this analysis you have to do. I have not done this analysis, so I can't just sit here and tell you out of my imagination what will work, what will not work. I have no idea. You have to spend time, you have to spend hours analyzing what works, what doesn't work, what do people want, what do people like, what do people love, what do people crave. And the things that people crave, can they actually be helpful for the country? You have to think about these things. This is something you have to do, sir. Okay? This takes a lot of time and effort. And what you can do is you can spend months doing this analysis and then create one software which may or may not work. Or what you can do is you can start trying lots of ideas, ship one product every week for the next 1 year. So in 1 year, you have 52 products that have gone out, and see how is the demand, how is the response. Out of those 52 products, maybe 5% will become popular. Maybe 3% will become popular. Right? So even if 10% out of 50, that's five. So even after 1 year, if two of your products become popular, you'll make good money and you will understand what works, what doesn't work, right? So I think the better approach is to ship one product a week for 1 year and see how it goes. That way you have a much higher chance of success compared to spending 6 months doing your research and then shipping one product after that. So I think that's what you should do. Try lots of different ideas. If you are a software engineer, you already have the tools and the skills. Okay. Start pushing out lots of products. Push one product out into production every week for the next 1 year. And then I'm sure you will get a way better understanding and feel for what works, what doesn't work, what is popular, what has the potential to be popular, what is not going to work, and what can be helpful for the country. That's what I would suggest you should do. All right. All the best, sir. Dhruv Patel says, you mentioned census. Yesterday, government announced. Well, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Finally, a step in the right direction. I am very glad. Good. I'm glad. Ritvik Hilvanshi says, Russia takes a second strike by Ukraine on oil refinery. They have taken multiple strikes, not second strike, multiple strikes. And from sitting over here, far away from Russia, okay, I am not there, so I don't know what's actually happening on the ground, but it looks like the Russians are just sitting and taking it. Bang, bang, bang. And okay, all right, let's do it. Let's take more. I don't know what Russia is doing. Why isn't Russia taking some steps to prevent Ukraine from launching more strikes? Not sure what Russia is doing. I'm not sure what the strategy and the objectives are right now, but Russia is kind of looking weak right now. Right? So Russia has taken multiple strikes on at least 3 ports from which oil is exported. And in those ports, you have big storage facilities for oil, and those are being hit by Ukrainian drones. So what the Ukrainians are doing is they are sending swarms of drones, maybe 1,000 drones at the same time, flying low, flying over the territories of other nations until they reach Russia. Which nations are these? Is it Poland? It's definitely the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, perhaps Poland also, and then it's striking in the St. Petersburg, etc. region. And Russia is just sitting and taking it. So, yeah, Russia looks a little lost, little weak right now. It's not a good look for Russia. And that's going to have an impact on us also, because that oil, it comes here. Yeah, it comes to India. Amisha Mishra, good evening, ma'am. From MEGA to mega destruction, Trump's mask fell off. So it was MAGA. What is MEGA? MEGA. What's MEGA? Make Israel great again? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, so Trump's what do you say? His slogan is MAGA, right? Make America great again. And then people have accused him of actually having the agenda of MEGA, which is making Israel great again. And Trump, he used to boast that during his first term as president, he did not start a single war. The first president after decades who did that did not start a single war. And during this term, initially, he was hankering after a Nobel Prize. He even stole the Nobel Prize of that lady, that Venezuelan lady, whatever her name is, who wanted to become Venezuela's leader, but she didn't get what she wanted. So he even took her medal for himself because she came and gave it to him. So he wanted Nobel Peace Prize, and look at what he's done now. In January, he did a regime change in Venezuela. He kidnapped the president of the nation. I mean, incredible. And now he has gone and he's in the process of destroying the future of Iran. Right? It's going to take Iran decades to rebuild itself whenever this war eventually stops after that. And who's going to pay for it? The Americans won't pay for it. Yeah, so Trump's mask has indeed fallen off. Yeah. His carefully cultivated mask of being a pacifist and a president who doesn't start wars, all of that has fallen off very rapidly during his second term as the US president. Dheeraj Kamath says, if the US withdrew from West Asia, would Iran become the regional hegemon? Or would Greater Israel become the regional hegemon? That seems to be the ploy to me. That's a good question. So let's say the US is forced. So the US will not willingly withdraw from West Asia. They will want to remain in West Asia, but if Iran destroys all their military bases, as what's most likely happened, and if Iran continues to have the ability to launch drones and missiles on demand in whatever quantity they want, then the Americans can't stay in the region. They can't stay in the region. They will have to withdraw from the region. Their ships can't be in the region because their ships will be obliterated by the Iranians. Drone swarms are, you can't defeat drone swarms, right? And if you combine drone swarm attacks with ballistic missiles, that's a devastating combination. So even aircraft carriers can't defend against that. So if Iran forces the United States to withdraw from West Asia, then who becomes the regional hegemon? Well, Iran definitely will be the regional hegemon, okay? But will Israel also be a regional hegemon? That depends on how things go in the coming days and weeks. Um, because Israel seems to actually have this aspiration of creating a greater Israel from the Nile all the way to the Tigris-Euphrates region, Mesopotamia region. Because I've seen soldiers, Israeli soldiers, IDF soldiers with that greater Israel patch on their shoulder. So it looks like it's an actual agenda for Israel. So can Israel actually make this happen? Right now, they are in the process of occupying territory that belongs to the nation of Lebanon. Okay, that's what Israel is doing right now. So they are expanding their territorial holdings right now. They've also taken a little bit of territory from Syria uh, when the Assad regime fell and the terrorist Al-Shara or whatever he is, he took over. So if Israel is able to significantly expand its territory, then it could be more of a hegemon than it is right now. Right now, Israel, it scares other nations. Other nations are worried about Israel because it has, essentially unlimited support from the United States in terms of funding, in terms of weapons or whatever, right? And also because Israel has nuclear weapons. But let's say Iran forces the US to withdraw, and then Iran acquires nuclear weapons. Then I think Iran becomes more of a hegemon than Israel. Yeah. So, Israel would definitely want to become the only hegemon, and that's why they don't want this war to end until the regime in Iran is defeated and there's a regime change. So, Israel most likely wants the complete destruction of Iran and a regime change. And it doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon, the way things are going. So, if the war ends the way it's going right now, I think Iran becomes the regional hegemon, especially if it's able to acquire nuclear weapons quickly. Sergeant Skylan says, are Pakistani nukes sovereign? So the fiction that we are told is that Pakistan developed its own nuclear weapons through the efforts or through the untiring, unceasing efforts of the Pakistani nuclear scientist Abdul Qadir Khan, Dr. A.Q. Khan. And it is said that Dr. A.Q. Khan stole blueprints of reactors or centrifuges or whatever from the Netherlands, and he came to Pakistan with those stolen items, and that's how they were able to develop a Pakistani nuclear weapons program and test their own nukes. That's the fiction we are told. But I don't buy it at all. Now, I don't have any evidence whatsoever that the nukes on Pakistani territory are American nukes, but I am 99.9% certain that the Pakistani engineers and scientists don't have the wherewithal to develop nuclear weapons on their own. So most likely these nuclear weapons are American nuclear weapons. Some people say they are Chinese nuclear weapons. When Pakistan was a US vassal in the 1980s and 1990s, how do you imagine that the US would have allowed China to give nukes to Pakistan, which is an American vassal? I don't see that happening logically. So most likely the nuclear weapons on Pakistani territory are not Pakistani in nature. They are American nuclear weapons on loan to Pakistan, and not really on loan either. Most likely those nuclear weapons in Pakistani territory are handled by Americans only. Pakistanis are not even allowed to come near them. That's most likely what the situation is. So my answer is that I am strongly of the opinion, without any evidence, okay, but I strongly believe that the Pakistani nukes are not sovereign at all. They actually belong to the US. And the objective of putting those nukes in Pakistan is to counterbalance India. Okay. Rahul Rahul Laddu says, great point. The lesson here is speed of production matters more than just quantity and quality. Big fan of you. Thank you so much, sir. Yeah, yes, I suppose you're talking about the missiles and drones, right? We need to ramp up our production of missiles and drones. It's not enough to be able to maybe manufacture 200 in a year or something. We need to be able to manufacture 2,000 in a month, or at least 200 in a month, right? When it comes to missiles of one kind, maybe we should be able to manufacture 200 Brahmos in a month. But we should also, in parallel, be able to manufacture 200 Nirbhay in a month, and 200, Agni, various kinds of Agnis. And we should be able to manufacture several thousand drones in a month. That's the kind of production output we need. That's the kind of scale we need. So yes, the speed of production matters. And the quality, of course, we need decent quality. It doesn't have to be the best in the world. But as long as we have the quantity and decent quality, then we're good, along with high speed of production. Suman Vikrant says, how did Alexander conquer Persia on the ground? How did this happen? See, it's a good question. See, like I say, Persia, it's a very difficult nation to conquer, right? As Saddam Hussein discovered in 1980. It's got all these mountains and mountain ranges. It's like a fortress. And if you try to fight in the mountains, you're going to be defeated by the locals. So, how did Alexander manage to conquer Persia? It's because there were two pitched battles between Alexander's army and the army of Darius III. If Darius had dispersed his army across Iran, refused to give Alexander a full-on battle at any point in time, and just harassed him continuously every step of his way through guerrilla warfare and tactics, Alexander would not have survived. But Darius was of the opinion that I am the emperor of the Persian Empire. I have this gigantic army. What is this Alexander in front of me? I'll take my entire army and I'll face Alexander in battle, in a pitched battle. And that was the mistake he made. So the Macedonian tactics and strategies were better than the Persian tactics and strategies, and that's why Alexander was able to defeat Darius the third 2 times. What was the first battle? I forget the name, but the second was Gaugamela, which was the decisive battle, and Darius was defeated twice in pitched battles, and that's how Alexander was able to conquer Persia. If Darius had divided his armed forces and put them all across Persia, and especially used the mountainous ranges and all the terrain, Alexander did not stand a chance. See? So Darius made a mistake. Big mistake. Fatal mistake, of course. Utkarsh Marathi says, what is the reason behind Delhi preparedness drills? Last time drills happened, we know what followed. 4 airports closed, sirens installed in Jodhpur, etc. Well, I don't know. Yeah, we know what happened last time. Such drills happened. We had Operation Sindoor that happened. So I think we should all be kind of mentally prepared in case something happens. But I am not aware of whether there are any plans for something happening. Maybe the government may have noticed some kind of activity on the Pakistani side, and that's why we are just preparing for any eventuality. That's also a possibility. Another possibility is maybe we are preparing for our own action. Potentially, I don't know. I'm just guessing. I'm just speculating here. I have no information. So my point is, I don't know what's happening. But I'm glad that we are in a high state of preparedness, because we have a terrorist rogue nation, an artificial temporary terrorist rogue nation on our doorstep, and we have to be always prepared for any eventuality. Pain has become a new member. Thank you very much, Pain G, and welcome to the channel's membership. Thank you. 24 Bharat says, when Great Britain created Congress, they instilled their Fabian socialist ideology into it to prevent India from ever industrializing in the way the USSR and China did. See, The Congress party was a Gandhian party, actually. Their entire ideology and their entire method of functioning was Gandhian in nature. The Congress party was founded, it was created in the 19th century by a British individual called Alan Octavian Hume, who was a British East India Company or whatever, British official who served in India for a long time. And he is the infamous person who created the great hedge of India that caused the deaths of, I don't know, lakhs, maybe millions of Indians. Okay, look into it. Would you like to look into it? Let's see. Okay, the great hedge of India. So first of all, let's see Alan Hume. Alan Octavian Hume. So this, okay, Alan Octavian Hume, this person, okay, British reformer. Ah, what a great thing to be. A reformer, ornithologist, civil servant, botanist, and was the founder of the Indian National Congress. But what about the great hedge of India? Where is that? Have they removed it? Have they removed all references to that? Ah, Indian Customs Line. Okay. So, Commissioner of Customs. So he created the Inland Customs Line, this division between two parts of India. Okay. To prevent the smuggling of salt from coastal regions into other parts of India to avoid the substantial salt tax, because the British taxed salt in India. Okay. And that caused, see, it caused the deaths of a lot of people in India. It's impossible to know how many died of salt deprivation in India. So we don't know how many people died, but a lot of Indians died because of this. Okay, this action that Alan Octavian Hume took, but he is portrayed here as a great reformer who was out here to reform our society. And he was the founder of the Indian National Congress. So when did he found the Indian National Congress? When did the foundation happen? Sometime in the 19th century. Where is it? Okay, whatever year it is, I'm not going to waste my time and dig through this Wikipedia article. As always, please remember, Wikipedia is not necessarily a source of reliable information, especially about Indian history. But okay, so this guy, Alan Hume, founded the Indian National Congress. And if you will examine the kind of leaders the Indian National Congress had, you will find that, millions of Indians, lakhs and crores of Indians became members of the Congress party during the pre-1947 period. Okay. But the leaders of the Congress party, if you see who they were almost exclusively English-speaking, British-educated people, and all more or less, predisposed towards a non-violent resistance of the British occupation of India, not violent resistance, right? And then you had the great Mr. Nehru and the great Mr. Gandhi. You also had the great Mr. Patel. And then you had Mr. Bose, Subhash Chandra Bose, who became the president of the INC, but who was then outmaneuvered by Mr. Gandhi. Mr. Gandhi engineered a coup within the Indian National Congress that ousted Mr. Bose from the presidency or leadership of the Indian National Congress. So Mr. Gandhi knew that Mr. Bose was not a pacifist. He did not believe in non-violence. He believed in getting rid of the British by hook or by crook. And that's why Mr. Gandhi was against Mr. Bose. And he outmaneuvered him and engineered a political coup against Mr. Bose. And eventually, when you had India's so-called independence in 1947, which was actually dominion status, then there was a vote, an internal vote within the Congress party, okay, about who will become the first Prime Minister of India. And you would have different Congress divisions, shakhas or whatever it was within India, their leaders would come and vote for who will become the first Prime Minister of India. And the majority of the votes went for Mr. Patel, so Sardar Patel. And no one voted in favor of Mr. Nehru. So Mr. Gandhi took Mr. Patel for a walk and he said, Mr. Patel, you need to withdraw your candidature and support Mr. Nehru. And so Mr. Patel agreed to what Mr. Gandhi said. He obeyed the order. He withdrew from the candidature. And despite Mr. Nehru not getting any votes, he was appointed by Mr. Gandhi as the first Prime Minister of India. And it was Mr. Nehru who was a Fabian socialist. I don't think there were too many other Congress leaders who were Fabian socialists. It was Mr. Nehru who was that. And Fabian socialism was all about very slow, very gradual economic growth. It wasn't about massive progress and massive rapid industrial growth. Fabian socialism was about slow, gently growth. And that's what Mr. Nehru was all about. So Mr. Gandhi ensured that a Fabian socialist becomes the Prime Minister of India. And that ensured that India suffered from the Nehruvian rate of growth for decades. And those precious decades were lost when India could have grown very rapidly. And that's the deal. Kunal Vashisht says, assume that Trump is a genius and is playing a long-term game. Please analyze the advantage America will have with economic collapse, resources, currency, food, etc. Assume Trump is a genius. Okay, let us play a game of suspension of disbelief. You see, when you watch certain movies, sometimes you have to suspend your disbelief and say, okay, this doesn't make sense, but okay, let's play along. And just so that we are entertained, let's assume that's correct. Some stupid things they will show which don't make any sense in real life, but okay, let's just watch it. Let's suspend our disbelief and let's watch the movie so that we are entertained. So you are asking me to suspend my disbelief and assume that Trump is a genius and is playing some kind of long-term game. So what advantages will the US have with economic collapse? Resources, currency, food, etc. Look, if Trump is a genius, the US wins this war. If the US wins this war, everything will be hunky and dory. Okay? The Strait of Hormuz will open again. The world will have oil on America's terms from Iran. The US dollar will stay strong. Resources will be available to whoever wants on American terms. So if Trump is a genius, then America wins this war and everything is fine for the US. And if Trump is not a genius, then the US loses this war and then everything goes wrong for the US. Okay? So if Iran wins this war and the Strait of Hormuz remains closed or it remains open only on Iran's terms, and if the Houthis can block the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, then nations like India, Japan, etc. will have to purchase oil from the US. So that is advantageous for the US. But if the US is forced to withdraw from West Asia because Iran has won the war, then Iran and all the Gulf nations will sell oil in non-dollar currencies, probably Chinese yuan. That weakens the US dollar gradually over time and significantly. And that's very bad for the US. It's a disaster for the US. Right? Their economy will be in very bad shape. There'll be inflation. There'll be prices going out of control. There'll be shortages. So if Trump is a genius and he wins the Iran war, then everything is fine long term. But if Trump is a genius and loses the Iran war, then things don't look good for the US. Okay. Harshit Parihar says, can we expect RIC with Iran instead of India? RIC with Iran is already there, kind of. Right? Because see, Russia and Iran have strategic military cooperation. Iran has been supplying very large quantities of Shahed drones to Russia, which Russia has been employing in the Ukraine war. China and Iran also have a long-term strategic partnership. Okay, they've signed a strategic agreement, a 25-year strategic agreement. So you already have that sort of RIC, Russia, Iran, China. But the more powerful RIC that could emerge would be Russia, India, China. But I'm not sure how viable that is. It will all depend on the outcome of the Iran war. If Iran wins this war, if the US is forced to withdraw from West Asia, India will have way more leverage over the US in a variety of things. And India, may behave very differently from the way it's behaving right now. So it will all depend on what happens. What's the outcome of this current war? Jimmy Lee says, please check the latest Shroud of Turin finding. I saw the news reports. So scientists have analyzed the DNA from the Shroud of Turin, and they have found that about 40% of the DNA seems to be of Indian origin, and even the fibers seem to have been manufactured in the Indus Valley region or the Western Indian region. So it looks like this shroud was manufactured in India, and then it ended up in Europe. And the DNA. Okay, let's see what our friend Google has to say. Shroud of Turin. What's it say? What's the news? Okay, let's see India. What's the news? A 2026 DNA analysis of the Shroud of Turin, conducted by University of Padua researchers, found that nearly 40% on the human DNA of the human DNA on the cloth has Indian lineages, suggesting the linen was likely manufactured or sourced from the ancient Indus Valley or wherever else. South Asia, to hell with your South Asia, it's India. So researchers used advanced technology, next generation sequencing on 1978 sample materials to identify that roughly 38.7 to 40% of the DNA originates from Indian subcontinent lineages. The data suggests that the flax on the woven cloth itself was imported by Romans from India to the Mediterranean, often linked to the term Hindoin in historical texts. The study also identified DNA from various plants, animals, cats, dogs, pigs, and other regions, indicating the cloth was exposed to numerous environments over centuries, with 55.6% of the DNA originating from the Near East and 5.5% from Western Europe. While this suggests an Indian origin for the material, researchers caution that the contamination shows the cloth was handled by diverse populations throughout history, etc., etc., etc. Okay. So the material was of Indian origin. It doesn't, and the study doesn't suggest that this shroud was actually used to wrap the body of Shri Jesus Christ, Mr. Christ. And it doesn't suggest that if Mr. Christ did exist, then he was of Indian origin. Nothing like that. The material is of Indian origin. Okay. Lalitha Ananta says, big fan of you. Thank you so much, sir or ma'am. Listening to your Ask Abhijit shows offline for the past 2 years, unlearning and learning many things. Thank you very much for everything you're doing and for educating us. Thank you so much for your very kind and generous comment. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And you are very welcome indeed. Thank you. Prashant Panwar says, will it make sense for the US to use Pakistan for an invasion? Maybe. Because if we look at the map tells us half the story, more than half the story. See, it's an option the US will consider. Look, here we have our region. You have Iran over here. And east of Iran, you have Afghanistan and Pakistan. Pakistan shares a pretty large border with Iran. The Balochistan region, which is split between Pakistan and Persia and Iran, right? So, and very close to the Pakistan border, roughly about 100 kilometers or so, you're the big port of Chabahar. So if the Americans want to make a move on Chabahar and Kodarak, they could perhaps activate Pakistani troops or whatever and have this happen. The question is, if they do this, will they be able to hold on to these ports? Possible if Pakistan gets involved directly in the matter. Possible, potentially. Or maybe not. We'll have to see. But see, if the Americans want to take some island, like for example Khark Island, it's almost impossible to take it because the Americans can't transit the Strait of Hormuz without getting destroyed. So it actually makes more sense to perhaps go after Chabahar or something. But maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. We'll see about that. So the US could, at some point in time, activate Pakistan and use Pakistan against Iran. Pakistan is a mercenary nation. They will do whatever their master tells them to do as long as there is something in it for them. Pratyush Paul says, what if and when EU cave into Trump's threats and join the war, and in response Russia and China join too? What will or should be India's response? Okay. So let's say Trump keeps threatening the Europeans and forces them to join the war against Iran. Okay. So let's say hypothetically the Europeans send troops and they send fighter planes and perhaps ships to the region. Well, that is obviously something that will augment America's the American-led strike capabilities against Iran, and that will be bad news for Iran potentially. Right, more pressure on Iran, and Iran is now no longer fighting a 7-8 front war; it's fighting a 12, 13, 15 front war. That's how it becomes. So in that case, it's possible that Russia and China may get involved directly. It may also mean that Russia makes some very drastic moves in potentially in Ukraine. Many things could happen as a consequence of this. So let's say European nations get involved, Russia and China also get involved in this war. Maybe Pakistan also gets involved in the war. What should India's response be? India's response should be, we stay out of this war. This is not our war. We are a neutral neighbor of Iran. We have not started the war, and we will not participate in the war. It is not our business. It's not our concern. And we should simply say that we urge restraint, and we urge everybody to stop fighting and negotiate and find a peaceful solution. That's all we should do, nothing more. But we should be prepared at all times for any potential Pakistani treachery or any other thing. Yours classically says, will Iran actually cut undersea data cables? Well, it depends on how badly Iran is being hit by the Americans and Israelis. At some point in time, Iran may do that. Yeah, if the Americans and Israelis keep on hitting Iranian power generating stations, oil reservoirs, universities, schools, cities, whatever, at some point in time, Iran will say, okay, we'll do this too. So it depends on how badly they are provoked by the Americans and Israelis. Yeah, they may actually do it. Piyush Shukla says, Namaste, Abhijit, thank you. Namaste. US has been number one superpower for about 40 years now. 40 years. Yeah, 40 years, okay, since the collapse of the USSR. 40 years? 36, 35 or so years. Okay. Don't you think that had it been another nation, world may be much worse? I know the US is bad too, especially for Bharat, but probably the best Vikal world had. Well, that's ifs and buts. Let's say the USSR had won the Cold War. Do you think the world would be so much worse than what it is under US hegemony? I'm not sure. Let's say in World War II, it's Germany that won hypothetically. You think they would have been much worse than the Americans? I don't know about that. I think all hegemons are alike. They're all alike in different ways. So in India, we have this great love for the Anglos, right? We were under British occupation for 2.5 centuries. We are very comfortable with the Anglo culture and their language, and that's why we see something of us in them somehow. Yeah, we understand them. We like their cinema, we like their movies, we like their TV series, we like their social media. We understand them. We feel like we are part of the same world, that sort of thing. But if it was Russia, if it was somebody else, then it would be a different language. It would be very alien to us. So we don't feel comfortable. But that's not the case, in my opinion. It doesn't matter what language an oppressor speaks. Oppressors are all pretty much the same. Okay. So I don't think it would have made much of a difference if it was the USSR that had actually won the Cold War, or if it was Germany that was ruling the world. I don't think it would have made much of a difference. For example, 800 years ago, the Mongols rampaged across the world. In the 13th century, Genghis Khan smashed Persia to bits, didn't he? Not Persia, but the Khwarezmian Empire. Shah Muhammad II, who had been very cruel to Genghis Khan's trade envoys. So in response, Genghis Khan smashed and obliterated the Khwarezmian Empire, which ruled over Persia. The Khwarezmian Empire was a Turkic empire. So initially, when the Mongols rampaged across the region, they would have looked incredibly cruel and completely alien to the Persians. But once the Mongols conquered the place, they turned out to be actually very good rulers, right? Despite being so strange and alien to the Persians. So it's not like, it makes much of a difference who the hegemon is. Yeah, if it is Timur, it's a disaster. If it is Chinggis, well, he was not that bad of a ruler. He was actually a pretty benevolent ruler. So it depends. I don't think if it was Russia instead of the US, it would have been much worse. Piyush Sinha says, if Iran acquires nuclear weapons, what is the possibility that it will remain a Chinese vassal, or will Iran itself be in the superpower race? No, Iran will be in the stable sovereign nations list. There are only six genuinely sovereign nations in the world. Which are these genuinely sovereign nations? The US, Russia, China, India, Israel, and Iran. That's six. These are the only genuinely sovereign nations in the world. Iran is not anyone's vassal right now. It is fighting multiple nations, very powerful nations, all alone. The only assistance it's getting from China and Russia is satellite imagery and uh, satellite positioning systems. And Russia and China are helping Iran because of their own, because it serves their interests. So Iran is no one's vassal. And if Iran acquires nuclear weapons, then its uh, sovereignty will become stable, because then nobody will want to mess with Iran, especially after seeing the ballistic missile and drone capabilities Iran has. Once they acquire nuclear weapons, nobody will want to mess with them. So Iran will be a major regional power, maybe a great power. See, without a massive economy, you can't be considered to be a great power, but a major regional power it will be. It won't be a superpower, anywhere close to being a superpower, but a major regional power. Okay. Somalia Paul says, fan for the last 4 years. Thank you so much. Thank you for opening the eyes. Also, I was checking about who is the owner of the Fed. They have hidden the fact. First of all, thank you so much. Thank you so much. You're very welcome. And yes, it's interesting to go and go down the rabbit hole and try to uncover who actually owns the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States. And you'll just go deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole, and you'll keep going in circles, and you won't find who actually owns it. That's how it is. The whole thing is structured in the US. So you have a privately owned bank that actually runs the economy of the US and owns the economy of the US, and you don't know who owns this private bank, who the major shareholders are. So the US is actually owned. It's a privately owned nation, and we don't know who the owners are. That's the situation, isn't it? Incredible. Dheeraj Kamath says, I am afraid of the census. It may embolden Hindu phobes. It may embolden Hindu phobes. See, the census, it's a statistical exercise, right? It's about collecting data and then presenting the findings to the nation. And obviously things will change, right? Demographics will have changed since 2011. Religious demographics may have changed. The percentage of certain populations, religious groups may have changed, and certain the population of certain religious groups may have decreased, some may have increased, and so on. Some may be hidden away, and they may still be misportraying what they really are, and so on and so forth. So I'm not sure how it will embolden Hindu phobes. I'm not able to understand how it could be the case. And I don't know why you're afraid of the census. I think it is very important that we get the census done so that we know what the current officially recorded situation is. What's the actual population of the country? What's the population distribution? What are the demographics like? It's important that we know the facts about our country. So I think it's a good thing, even if it may potentially scare you. It is always better to face the truth than to hide from it. Abhijit Singh says, is Donald Trump a blessing in disguise for the world, just like Rahul Gandhi is for the BJP? Okay, no comments about Indian politics. Is Donald Trump a blessing in disguise for the world? See, Donald Trump has started this war, okay, at the behest of Israel, it looks like. And the longer this war goes on, the more painful it's going to be for much of the world, for Australia, for Japan, for India, for the European nations, for Africa. It's going to be painful for everybody. So I'm not sure how it's a blessing, at least in the short term. A long term, if it ends up weakening the US and uh, you know causing the withdrawal of of the United States from West Asia, well, that in the long run, if this happens, it may be a good thing for nations like India and Iran, also for China, etc. It may be a good thing. It may be a good thing for the whole world. That the hegemony is declining. So long term, it may perhaps overall long term may be a good thing, but short term, it's going to cause a lot of pain. Yeah. Aman Pathania says DNA result of Shroud of Turin says that Jesus might have 40% Indian DNA. Is that news correct? What's your thoughts? So I just took a look at what the Google AI is saying. I haven't opened an actual research paper, but what the AI says is that approximately 40% of the total DNA that was studied on a small portion of the sample, about 40% of the DNA was of Indian origin. And the results they indicate that the material was of Indian origin. The fibers of the cloth were of Indian origin. Okay? The DNA result does not say that the blood or whatever may be on the Shroud of Turin was that of Mr. Christ, of Mr. Jesus. There is no evidence that this was on the body of Mr. Jesus. Okay, it's a story that's come along all this time, but there is no evidence that Mr. Jesus was wrapped in this cloth. No evidence whatsoever. So we don't even know if Mr. Jesus actually existed. And secondly, if he existed, we don't know that we have no evidence that he was wrapped in this shroud. And this 40% DNA, it's related to, see, they found DNA samples of cats, dogs, pigs, and so many other things. But 40% of it is of Indian origin, which seems to indicate that the fibers of the cloth are of Indian origin, maybe Western India, the Indus Valley region, that sort of thing. So it does not indicate anything. The result doesn't say that Mr. Jesus was of Indian origin. Nothing like that. Okay. Yashaswini Komineni says, hello, sir. How do you think we as a country can develop civic sense in our country? It's very simple. It's very easy to develop civic sense. The government needs to guarantee that if somebody breaks the rules, there's going to be a guaranteed punishment every single time. Every single time somebody spits on the street, that person should be guaranteed a heavy fine. Okay? And every time if you're in this habit of spitting, and you spat 5 times yesterday, and the fine is 500 rupees per spit, per incident, then if you spat 5 times on the street yesterday, and today you have a fine of 2,500 rupees, and if you keep doing it and you keep getting fined, then you're going to stop. Okay? So if the punishment is guaranteed, then people will have the incentive to stop doing this. That's how the Singaporeans changed things. They imposed heavy fines for things like public urination, public spitting, and whatever else, jaywalking, whatever. So initially, Singapore was a third world nation with very low standards. But within 20 years, everything had changed, everything was transformed. It's all about the government enforcing the rules. In India, we have all kinds of rules and laws on paper, but nothing is enforced, nothing is implemented. And that's why people do whatever they want. People have to be trained the way we train children. And the same Indians, when they go to other countries, they are the most well-behaved people. They will never spit on a street. They will never do any of those things, right? Because there you have proper enforcement. So Indians are by nature a law-abiding people. But when there is no enforcement of law and there are no consequences, people do whatever the hell they want. So it's very simple. You can keep lecturing people the way you can keep lecturing children. See, you can lecture children for hours and hours and hours. It will go in through one ear, go out from the other ear. Instead of lecturing, if you give guaranteed punishment for misbehavior, the behavior will change very rapidly. Lecturing people and say we need to have better standards and better civic sense will make no difference. Enforce the laws, guarantee punishment, which means that our authorities start to do what they are being paid to do. Okay, that's what needs to happen. Empty Box says, what leverage Israel has with the US? Looks like Israel is ruling the US. I don't know what leverage the Israelis have with the US. People say maybe there's something to do with the Epstein files. Remember the Epstein files just a few weeks ago? It was all over the news. Now people have completely forgotten it because of this war. So maybe there are big secrets hidden away in the Epstein files. I mean, from whatever little I saw on social media, it was disgusting and sickening. And maybe very, very powerful people, they are compromised in the Epstein files. Okay, and it is alleged that Epstein had links with Israel. So maybe Israel has all the evidence about various powerful people in various in various roles in the US government, potentially. Yeah, possibly. So that's one speculation. And maybe there's some other leverage also, perhaps. I don't know. It's possible. Sandesh says, post-war, if the US focuses west and a multipolar south emerges, should we prioritize Iran, Russia oil pipeline by taking POK? We and our obsession with POK. By taking POK or Southeast Asia trade control. Forget about POK right now. Indians. Forget about POK for now. Okay? If the US focuses west and a multipolar south, no multipolar south will emerge. Well, see, what is a multipolar south like? A multipolar south means you have nations like India and Indonesia and Malaysia and Vietnam and Iran and Saudi Arabia. And these are all more or less equal nations, and China and North Korea. All these nations are all independent and sovereign and are all reasonably powerful in their own right. That's a multipolar south. That is not going to happen. In the global south, now, if the US moves out of West Asia, we're going to have India, Iran, and China as the powerful nations. So it's a tripolar south. And India and Iran have no enmity of any kind as such. But China will not want a multipolar global south. They will want a unipolar global south. So anyway, forget about the multipolar angle. If the US moves out of West Asia, we should buy Iranian and Russian oil for sure. We don't need to take POK for that. The Americans will not give up POK. They will not give up Pakistan. If we take it, well and good, but I don't see it happening soon. I hope I'm completely wrong. I hope I'm completely mistaken about that. So what we should do is we should simply buy Iranian oil through oil tankers from the Strait of Hormuz. Takes like 3-4 days to come. What's the big deal? Piyush Sinha says, Qatar gave the biggest bribe to Trump. Saudi invested the most in the USA and got the biggest hit on their land. How must they have felt? It's actually, if you put yourself in the shoes of Qatar and Saudi Arabia, it's painful. It's tragic, isn't it? The government of Qatar gave an entire gigantic aircraft as a gift, as a bribe to Trump. And Trump did nothing to protect Qatar when the war happened. Saudi Arabia has bought tens, maybe hundreds of billions worth of American weapons, right? So they have invested and they've bought American treasury bonds and God knows what. They've invested a lot in the US. And when the war happens, Saudi Arabia is hit. The Americans had promised that we are installing these military bases on your soil to protect your territory from the Iranians. But when the war happened, there was no protection. The American bases themselves were destroyed by the Iranians. And every nation in the Gulf got the impression that the Americans were more interested in protecting Israel than the Gulf nations. Yeah. So I guarantee you, they will have this strong sense of betrayal right now. That the Americans have lied to them, they've betrayed them, they've used them. And these military bases were more about controlling those nations, the Gulf nations, than for protecting the Gulf nations. Abhishek Patil says, if the US controls nuclear weapons of Pakistan. Why did India agree to a ceasefire with Pakistan? What's the real reason behind the ceasefire? The real reason potentially is Trump blackmailing India and ordering India to stop the war. Otherwise, I will impose 3 million different kinds of sanctions and tariffs on you. The US can destroy an economy by doing that, right? So, whatever the government of India says, okay, we have to say that for diplomatic purposes. But most likely, it is Trump's arm twisting tactics that most likely stop the war. Most likely because we hit some very valuable US assets in Pakistan. For example, one of the valuable US assets in Pakistan is the nuclear weapons. Okay, American nuclear weapons, which most likely are handled only by Americans. Pakistanis are not even allowed near those nuclear weapons. There are some military bases where the Pakistanis are not allowed. Only Americans are allowed. Then there is the F-16s that the Americans have sold to the Pakistanis. Those F-16s, each of those F-16 fighter planes, it is babysat. There are babysitters for it. These are American babysitters, American technicians and American personnel who babysit every single F-16 and never let the aircraft out of their sight. So if India destroyed a number of F-16s in Noor Khan Air Base or whatever, there would have been American personnel there who would also have been hit by the Indian missiles. So once that happens, Trump will immediately pick up the phone and demand that India stops the war. Right? I think Trump did not imagine that India will start doing so much damage to Pakistan so rapidly. I mean, within a matter of a few hours, India hit 11 Pakistani air bases. And if the war had continued another 48 hours, Pakistan would have been essentially destroyed, militarily at least. So that's why Trump insisted, demanded, threatened. He demanded a stop of the war immediately. And afterwards, Mr. Modi gave a live address to the nation. You could see his anger. So you could see the anger in his face at the time. So I think that's what happened. Matt Blackbeard says, why are Russians being cozy with Pakistan and offering them discounted oil? Also, Iran is refusing Pakistan's mediation and calling India to mediate. Look, oil is not a strategic asset. Okay? If you are an oil exporter, you will export it to everybody. The Russians, for example, okay, they export uranium to the United States. Okay? They also export rocket engines to the United States. Now, I think it stopped now. But even after the Ukraine war, Russia was exporting uranium and rocket engines to the United States. The US is Russia's number one enemy, right? So it's about money. Russia needs money. So it will sell these things even to the US. And when it comes to oil, it's not a strategic asset, right? It's not some sensitive thing. So they'll sell it to Pakistan. What's the big deal? I don't see that being Russia being cozy with Pakistan. It's simply selling oil. I mean, India and China are not on good terms, very good terms, but China still sells things to us. We also sell things to China. So this is business. This is nothing to do with strategic interests. Iran is refusing Pakistan's mediation because Iran knows Pakistan's treacherous nature. Okay, Iran knows that Pakistan is an American vassal. A couple of years ago, Iran and Pakistan had a very brief border conflict. They fired missiles at each other's territory, and Iran accused Pakistan of doing cross-border terrorism in Iran's territory. So Iran doesn't like Pakistan. Iran is not a fan of Pakistan. Iran does not trust Pakistan. So if Pakistan says, "Sir, we will mediate," then Iran will say, "Go to hell," right? Yeah. So has Iran asked for India to mediate? I'm not sure. Let's fact check that. I am not aware of that having happened. Maybe I'm not aware. Let's see. Iran-India mediation. Mediation. Has India asked? Has Iran asked India to mediate in the war? No, yeah, they have. Okay, let's see. Iranian government sources and representatives have expressed that India is the trusted friend and welcomed its potential role in mediating to reduce tensions in the ongoing West Asia conflict, with some officials stating that India could be an effective, positive mediator, as per Indian media reports. Da, 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 da. Okay. Um, okay. So, whatever. Look, I am not a big fan of India mediating in all these matters. This is not our conflict. If we go and mediate in the war, what do we gain out of it? Okay, potentially we could help end the war, but there is no guarantee of it. I think India should stay out of this matter. Indians, a lot of Indians they hanker after prestige and status. We mediated the end of the war. Stay out of these matters. And the Americans don't want India as a mediator. Okay, Trump doesn't want India as a mediator. So it's all right. Kratos Aryavartavasi says, is difference of Iran and Pakistan despite Islamification? Iran proudly admires its pre-Islamic heritage and calls Arabs and other invaders as barbarians. I think that's the main difference between Iran and Pakistan. See, um, Iran is a roughly, see, about, if you look at the past 3,000 years of Iran's history, it's been ruled by at least 25 dynasties and empires. Okay, starting from the Medians to the Achaemenids to the Macedonians and Seleucids and Parthians and Sassanids and Rashidun, Umayyad, Abbasid, and so on and so forth, caliphates, and then the Mongols, then the Turks, then the Ghaznavids, then the Seljuks, then the Safavids, and the Hotaks, Pashtuns for a bit, 7, 8, 9 years, or whatever it was. Then by the Turks again, Nadir Shah, and then by the Qajar dynasty again, Turkic, and then the Pahlavis, who were British puppets and American puppets, and so on. So long, long, long history of Iran, of all these ups and downs, and they've had certain very catastrophic periods of time. The one of the major catastrophes for Iran was Alexander's destruction of Persia. That's number one. The second major catastrophe was the Arabic invasion and occupation of Iran and the destruction of Iran's traditional religious religion and culture. Okay, that's the second devastating thing. The third devastating thing was the Mongol conquest of the Khwarazm Empire, which included Iran. And it was not the fault of the Persians; it was the fault of the goddamned Shah of Khwarazm, idiot person, and his cowardly son. But somehow Iran has always maintained, it has always retained its language, and it has actually exported its architecture and art and music and cuisine and standards to the Islamic world. So Iran has essentially, despite having forced to become an Islamic nation, it has exported non-religious aspects of culture throughout the Islamic world. And the Persian standards became the global Islamic standards. So even in India, the Mughal Empire, the Mughal dynasty, they adopted Persian standards and Persian ways of doing things and all. So Persia has somehow ensured that its culture endures in some shape or form through the language, through the architecture, through various other things, right? And in the 20th century, when you had Reza Shah, who was the British puppet who ruled Persia, he was not very fond of Islam. And he made it a point to emphasize Persia's pre Islamic culture as one of the civilizational foundations of Iran, of Persia, right? Um, and the Persian people are proud, they are rightfully proud of their long-standing, history, long-standing civilization and culture and history, despite having lost their religion to foreigners. Uh, so the thing about, if you compare Persia and Pakistan is this: if you remove Islam hypothetically, okay, completely hypothetically from Persia, you still have Persian culture and the Persian language, but Persian culture, which is distinctly Persian, it did not come from anywhere else. If you remove Islam hypothetically from Turkey, they still have Turkish culture. If you remove Islam from Pakistan, what do they have? They're just Indians, right? So the Pakistanis are deeply they they they, they want to be anything except anything other than Indians. Right? They are very deeply ashamed of their forefathers having been Hindus and all that. So Iran is proud of its pre-Islamic heritage, and Pakistan is ashamed of its pre-Islamic heritage. That's the biggest difference between the two nations. Kratos Aryavartavasi says, and Pakistan calls Turkic invaders like Khilji, Babar as heroes, disavows its Hindu past, so Iran acts to preserve its sovereign identity against Turks and Arabs. Yeah, exactly. That's the deal, right? The Pakistanis, they glorify the Khiljis and the Ghaznis and the Ghaznavis and the Ghoris and Babur and Aurangzeb. All these barbarians who brutalized their own ancestors, they are glorified today, right? And they want to distance themselves from their actual past, which is their Indian and Hindu past. So yeah, that's the difference between Pakistan and Iran. Really now, Ms. Patel says, US, Israel, hard power falling, Iran are so courageous. Well, you've got to admire what Iran is doing. We in India worry about fighting a two-front war, two and a half front war. Iran is fighting simultaneously against 5, 6, 7 countries, 8 countries, 9 countries, I don't know. US, Israel, technically Kuwait, Iraq, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, UAE. That's 9. Oman, 10. It's fighting a 10 front war. Even Azerbaijan, 11 front war. Yeah. Iran is fighting an 11 front war right now. And well, they clearly locally have more hard power and firepower than the US and Israel. Clearly they do. So yeah, you got to admire what the Iranians are accomplishing here. You don't have to agree with their government or whatever, but what they are doing on a military front in a professional manner. If you are a military professional, you are bound to admire what they're doing and respect what they're doing. Okay. Pagadi Akshay. Pagadi Akshay. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you very much. Akshay. Really now, Ms. Patel says, Iran are showing how it's done. The empire can be shaken. Yes. And why is Iran able to show how it's done? Because they have prepared really, really well. They've put in the hard work. They've done their homework. And they've analyzed their opponent's strengths and weaknesses and their own strengths and weaknesses really, really well. And they've taken all the measures necessary to ensure that they come out successful. So it's really tremendous professionalism, and you're got to respect what they're doing. Shatabish says, stakes for China are highest with Iran compared to low sustainable during Sindoor in Venezuela. That's why it's providing the best technology to Iran. What Ukraine is to the US, Iran is to China. There is a proxy war. No, Iran is not a Chinese proxy. Ukraine is an American proxy, yes. Iran is a sovereign nation. It is fighting on its own. China is providing satellite imagery and perhaps the Baidu positioning system. And China is doing this because if Iran falls, it's a disaster for China. So China is doing this for its own interests. Okay, not because Iran is a Chinese proxy or a Chinese vassal. Okay, so yes, the stakes are very high for China when it comes to Iran. They can't afford to see Iran fall to the US and to Israel. If Iran is taken out, it's going to be an absolute disaster for China because they will be left with Russia only. And yeah, it's providing high quality satellite positioning data services to Iran, and this satellite imagery that it is providing to Iran. Yes. Feels strong man says, you've said that a civilization is a net exporter of culture and not importer. You've also said that US is an empire, not a civilization. Means a civilization is not necessary to dominate culture. Since America is dominating now, can one differentiate burger wokism, rap versus yoga? What? Since America is dominating now. Can one differentiate burger, wokism, rap versus yog in future? I have no idea what any of that means. See, whatever I said, there are multiple characteristics. There's a whole set of characteristics that a civilization has. One of those characteristics is that a civilization is a net exporter of culture, not an absorber or importer of culture. Okay. I've also said that the US is an empire, not a civilization, because the US does not have many of the characteristics that a civilization has. Does it mean that a civilization is not necessary to dominate culture? No, it's you don't have to be a civilization to dominate culture. You don't have to be a civilization to export culture. You don't need to be a civilization to be the dominant culture in the world. The Romans were not a civilization, they were an empire, and yet they exported their culture as long as they were dominant. The whole of Europe started speaking Latin. Today, if you look at the text over here, what script is this? We are speaking, this is the English language, but the script is Latin. If you read Norwegian, it's the Latin script with slight modifications. If you read German, it's the Latin script with slight modifications. If you read French, it's the Latin script with slight modifications. If you read Italian, same things to all across Europe, apart from Russia, apart from Georgia and Armenia and Greece, you have the Latin script. That's how much Rome exported its culture despite not being a civilization, despite being an empire. Okay, so that's what I can tell you. I don't know about burger wokism and rap yoga. I have no idea about that. I'm not sure what you're asking. So not clear. Dheeraj Kamath says, if the 0.5 front Abrahamic supremacists know that Hindu population has reduced, they will get emboldened further. The census should be kept secret. No, it doesn't work like that. See, in a nation like India, the census has to be done periodically and the results have to be shared with the entire population. That's how it is done in India. India is a democracy, isn't it? And I'm pretty sure the Hindu population will have reduced. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I'm pretty sure. Because the way things are going, the Hindu population is going to reduce. So I think it is important that we find out exactly what the situation is, and so that people don't keep living in la la land. I think it's important we know what's happening. It should not be kept secret. It should be publicized so that everyone understands what has been happening and how much the governments of the past few years or decades have slipped up very badly in safeguarding our civilization. MTB Rider. Thank you very much, MTB Rider. That's a bike, is it? Two-wheeler, bicycle, MTB. Okay. International Reporter says, did you watch the 4,000 crore Ramayana teaser? Your thoughts? I haven't seen it. I am not going to watch it. I'm not going to watch the teaser. I'm not going to watch the movie. Okay? I'm not watching it. I'm not going to waste my precious time watching, what's his name? As Lord Ra, as Sri Ram. Come on. I'm not watching it. Okay. MTB Rider says, will Hindu-Muslim population change in the future? These things are, population and demographics are never static. Okay? They're dynamic. Keep changing ups and downs and so on and so forth. So I'm pretty sure the percentage of the Hindu-Muslim population in India will change in the future. It will change. Pretty sure. Okay. Saptarishi Chakrabarti says, were the Europeans always so tall or after colonization? See, when the Europeans first started arriving in the Americas, this guy Columbus discovered, he thought he discovered India, but he had discovered the Bahamas. So when he discovered the Americas in 1492, after that, the Spaniards started arriving in the Americas, greedy Spaniards looking for gold and slaves and all that. Then the French and the English started arriving on the east coast of the United States, starting from Florida, Virginia, etc., all those regions, and eventually went all the way up north. And whenever they met the natives, they were shocked to see how healthy and how tall the natives were compared to the Europeans. The Europeans were short, unhealthy, extremely dirty, unhygienic, etc. And the natives of the Americas were tall, very well constructed bodies and extremely healthy. So the Native Americans were, on average, significantly taller than the Europeans. But then the European diet changed because of the industrial revolution and the plentiful production of food and everything else, and that's why when you have a better diet, your body also changes. Even the Chinese, the past few decades, they've also grown taller, right? The Dutch weren't tall 200 years ago. Today, they are the tallest people in the world. It all depends on the diet. Okay, Lakshadip Bhutak says Iran US war is to stop growth of India China. What's the objective of the war against Iran, right? You have two nations who are attacking Iran. One is Israel, the other is the US. Both seem to have different objectives. For the US, it's about controlling Iran's oil, because Iran's oil accounts for about 15 to 20% of China's oil imports. If you stop that, it's a massive blow to China. So for the US, it's all about oil, oil, oil. Why did they go after Venezuela? Because Venezuela has a big, the world's largest reserves, proven reserves of oil. That oil is heavy sour oil or whatever, but it's still oil, right? So the Americans have taken that over. Now they want to take over Iran's oil, and that's why they've done the war. Also because Israel dragged them into the war, and Israel has a different set of objectives. Israel wants to be the only hegemon in the region, and the only thing standing in their way is Iran. And also Iran says that Israel doesn't have the right to exist and so on. So obviously Israel can't accept that. So it's not about India as much as China for the US. Of course, the US also has this policy of containing India right now. They have this containment policy against India, which they are implementing. But mainly it's about China and about taking control of Iran's oil for the US. Prateep Kumar Roy says, sometimes I feel like the same powers are controlling both the US and Russia and also Israel and India. And we're all just actors in this grand game. Well, who knows? Maybe it's true what you're saying. I have no idea. I can only discuss what I can see. There's a lot that I'm aware that we are unable to see. There's a lot that's hidden and shrouded behind secrecy. So yeah, sometimes one can potentially get that sort of feeling. What can I say? Ankita Kachap, good evening, ma'am. Question: how is Judaism different from Zionism? Are not all Jews are Zionist? Question mark. What's your opinion on Project Israel of the US? Looks like we have been shown or told only one side of the story by the mainstream media. Please shed some light. Zionism versus Judaism. Judaism is the religion, which is about 3,000 years old. It's the religion of the Jewish people, which originally was a polytheistic religion and then slowly morphed into a monotheistic religion with one God, one and only one God, which is Yahweh. And they had a variety of other gods. I forget the names of their gods because they're hard to pronounce and hard to remember, but the main God is Yahweh today. I mean, the only God. So it's a monotheistic religion, but it used to be polytheistic. So Judaism is that. It's got a 3,000 year old history. Zionism, as far as I understand it, is political. It's the political demand for, see, after the Jews were expelled from Israel by the Romans, they spread all across Europe and other parts of the world. And for roughly 2,000 years, they were out of their homeland, which is present-day Israel, that region, Judea. So in the 19th century, in the early 20th century, there was this demand for a nation for the Jews, and that is Zionism. Okay, the desire and demand of the Jews to have their own homeland and a powerful and strong and secure homeland, that is Zionism. So they have achieved their objective of having their own nation, Israel. It's been recreated after a gap of, I don't know, about 2,000 or so years. So now that the nation exists, what is Zionism? It still exists, right? Zionism still exists. I am not very clear about what Zionism is. So let's do one thing. I will also educate myself. What is Zionism in the present day context? What is Zionism? Let's see. A nationalist political and ideological movement that emerged in the 19th century Europe, advocating for the creation and later support of a Jewish state in Palestine. Yeah. So its core goal is to ensure the safety, sovereignty, and self-determination of the Jews in response to historical persecution and systemic anti-Semitism. Okay, so that's what it is. Yeah. So it's achieved its objective of creating a Jewish state. And now it's about safety and sovereignty and self-determination of the Jewish people. So yeah, it's about having a strong Israel. That is what Zionism is. And there are various different kinds of Jewish denominations and different kinds of viewpoints, political viewpoints among the Jewish people. And I'm sure that there are plenty of Jews who are not Zionist. Yeah. Right. So, okay. Now, what is my opinion on Project Israel of the US? I am not aware of Project Israel of the US. What is that? Project Israel of the US. I am not aware of it. Let's see. Project Israel of the US. What is that? I'm not aware of any project. Are you talking about a Greater Israel project? Are you talking about something else? So there is no Project Israel that the US has. The US offers unconditional support to Israel in whatever Israel does. Is that what you're referring to as Project Israel? I'm not 100% certain. If you're asking me why does the US support Israel always unconditionally, no matter what happens, it's because the Jewish diaspora is extremely powerful and influential in the US. In the 1920s or whatever, about almost 30% of New York's population was Jewish. And many of them were very wealthy and very powerful, very connected, and so on. And the Jewish diaspora is very tightly knit, very well connected, very influential, very powerful in the US. A lot of very high-ranking politicians and officials in the US are Jewish, and the Jews always support Israel, no matter what. They're not like Indians that once you become a US citizen, you forget about India and don't support India. It's not like that with the Jews. The Jews, no matter what nationality they have, they will always support Israel. So that's why there is this very big Jewish constituency, not very big, but very powerful Jewish constituency in the US. And since they're at all various levels of the US government, including some of the highest levels, that's why the US always, and they're in both parties, the Republicans and Democrats equally. So it's not like if the Republicans come to power, it's pro-Israel. If the Democrats come to power, it's not pro-Israel. No, it doesn't matter who is in power. It's always pro-Israel. So that's why the US is so pro-Israel. Yeah, that's what I can tell you. Okay. Prateep Kumar Roy says, do you think the US will pull out of NATO soon? I don't think it's going to happen soon. Okay. Let me show you why. Where is that? Okay. So look at this. I'll show you. It won't happen anytime soon because of this. See, this is a piece of news from 2023, December 14. The US Congress approves a bill barring any president from unilaterally withdrawing from NATO. Okay. So any US president who wants to withdraw from NATO will need the approval of Congress and due process. And see, once again over here, this is a tweet from 2023 by Marco Rubio, who is now the Secretary of State of the US. And he says that no US president should be able to withdraw from NATO without Senate approval. Thankful my colleagues in Congress passed this bipartisan measure. So he was part of the passing of this bill, Marco Rubio. So this makes it difficult for a US president to just unilaterally quickly withdraw from NATO. It's not possible. They will need Senate approval, and that will not be that easy. Okay. Rocky says, Russia, China, US all have expansion targets. As India becomes stronger, where should we expand, or shall we keep a defensive mindset? Russia allegedly has expansionist targets. Russia has shown no such tendencies. Russia, from a military perspective, is way more powerful than India, but it's not trying to conquer other nations' territories. It's not. A couple of decades ago, Vladimir Putin had actually officially, formally applied for Russia becoming a member of NATO, which means that he had no intention of expanding anywhere. He wanted a peaceful coexistence with other European nations. Of course, the US denied this request, right? And see, Russia is fighting Ukraine not as an expansionist project, but because they have no choice. because they can't allow NATO to encroach into Ukraine. So Russia doesn't have any expansionist targets. China is an expansionist hegemonic nation. The US also is that. That's what they've done. So as India becomes stronger, should we also have expansionist tendencies? No, I don't think so. We should seek to liberate Tibet from Chinese occupation, and we should seek to perhaps long term reunify the subcontinent. Maybe it should be a 50 or 100-year project. Can't do it right now with that sort of population, radicalized population. So I think that's what we should do. And right now we should not focus. We should not try. We should ensure that we don't get embroiled in any military confrontation with anybody. The next 20 years, we should keep our head down and work on becoming a major economy and a very powerful nation. That's all. Pradeep Kumar Roy says, "Did you watch Durandar 2 Views?" I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it, but I look forward to watching it very soon. Honest Human says, "When can we expect your next podcast with Def Talks with Adi? Your expressions are too interesting and fun to notice. Love your content anyways, or always. Thank you very much." I suppose it will happen sooner or later. We don't plan for that. If something interesting happens, I may have a podcast with Adi. We'll see about that. It's never something we plan that we'll do it once a month or once in 2 weeks or whatever. It just happens on the fly. So we'll see. And thank you so much. Thank you. MTB Rider says, "Will Muslims surpass Hindus in India's future when?" I have no idea. I don't discuss these religious matters. Okay, I don't discuss India's internal matters. I discuss geopolitics, history, and science. There are plenty of channels which discuss these Hindu-Muslim issues. This channel is not for that. I'm very sorry if you think it is. If you got the impression that I discuss this, but I don't discuss these matters. Okay. Pradeep Kumar Roy says, "Do you think the people who run this world are not very wise? I mean, they understand money and power, but not life so much. What do you think?" I think the people who run the world do it out of a sense of self-interest, and they see people as statistics, not as humans. I think Joseph Stalin said it very well, right? One death is a tragedy. 1,000,000 deaths is a statistic, right? So when you are a person who is ruling a very large nation, you can't allow yourself to be swayed by emotions that so many people died or so whatever. You have to look at it statistically from a numerical perspective and look at the long-term, large-scale macro interest of the nation. Of course, you should try and minimize human suffering, but overall, you have to look at the long-term and large-scale thing. So when people are, let's say, ruling or running the world, they will do it that way, and they will have their own agendas. They may be very powerful people. They may also be very wise, but their wisdom is going to serve them, not us. And they will, of course, understand money and power. And when you understand money and power, when you get that kind of power, it corrupts a lot of people. It intoxicates a lot of people, and then you stop valuing the well-being and happiness of other people, I suppose. Ankita G says, Ayush Singh wants to know, have you watched Durandar? What's your view? I haven't watched it yet, unfortunately. Yeah, so I don't have any views or reviews right now. I look forward to watching it soon. I certainly will watch it, but I haven't come around to watching it yet. ePublic of India says, if the US invades Iran and asks Pakistan for support, like air bases or a second front, could Pakistan instead escalate with India to avoid backing a US-Israel effort and to satisfy domestic opinion? Well, what does Pakistan gain from it? Pakistan gets a beating again from India, right? If the US asks Pakistan for support and Pakistan starts fighting with India, it's going to get a bloody nose again from India. India is militarily significantly superior to Pakistan. So it's going to have its Noor Khan and Bolari and other bases again smashed up by India. How does that serve Pakistan's interests? But what if it agrees to what the Americans are saying and starts fighting with Iran, and then the Iranians destroy their bases? So I think if the Americans try to drag Pakistan into this war with Iran, it's going to be heads I win, tails you lose for Pakistan. If it fights Iran, it's going to get smashed up by Iran. And if it fights India, which doesn't make any sense, it's going to get bashed up by India also. So no good options for Pakistan. Okay. Lakshadweep Bhutak says, you are a great person and role model. Carry on. Thank you so very much, Lakshadweep ji. Thank you so much. Anvesha, Anveshauna has become a new member of the channel. Thank you so much, Anvesha ji, and welcome to the channel's membership. Thank you so much. And Anvesha ji, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Okay. Pradeep Kumar Roy says, Moloch is actually Adramelech, and the sacrificial fire is Anamelech. The same fire that is used to initiate Brahmos and also Freemasons. Some say, I don't know. Okay, I don't have any understanding or knowledge of these matters. I haven't studied the Abrahamic religions, and Judaism is extremely obscure from my perspective. I don't know much about it. I'm aware of various Baal gods. I am vaguely aware of the existence of this god called Moloch. I don't know what Andra Melech and Anamelech is. Brahmos and Freemasons, I have absolutely no idea about this. So I can't comment about this because I don't know anything about this. G. Prabhaharan has become a new member. Thank you so much for becoming a member and welcome to the channel's membership. Thank you so much. Anonymous says, any tips on time management? I'm 18 years old, male, big fan. Thank you very much. You're most welcome. Thank you very much. Time management. Tips on time management. See, what would say about this is, uh, when you're doing time management, when you're planning for, let's say, the next day or the next week, don't make a big long list of tasks that you have to accomplish. Okay, in a day you should have only 2 or 3 major tasks, not more than that. If you have like 15 different tasks, it's gonna burn you out, and a lot of those tasks are going to be tasks that don't really take you forward in the right direction. So you should have maximum 3 tasks, major tasks in a day, and you should prioritize. You should know at what time in the day your energy is the highest, and that's the time in which you should do the most important and most mentally demanding or physically demanding tasks. And yeah, so remember the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of your results come from 20% of the work that you do. So identify what is the 20% of the work that you do that produces 80% of the results and focus on that. Okay. Right. So that's what I can say in very brief. It's a very big and rich and deep topic, but yeah. All right. All the best. Do well. And thank you. Rich Blaze says, is Trump a way for the US deep state to carry out dirty stuff so that the next person in power can get away by just saying this, that was Trump? Maybe. See, Trump is the right guy for the right time for the deep state. See, we know very well that the United States doesn't really need a president to be governed. From 2020 to 24, you had Biden, who was the president. Biden was not mentally there, right? He was not capable of taking care of himself, forget about the country. And Kamala Harris was not competent enough to be the vice president. So who was running the country? Somebody was, and it went fine. So the US president really doesn't matter. Okay. And someone like Trump is useful to shake up the world and make a mess of the world and change the whole system and destabilize the world. So, the US understood that the so-called rules-based world order that they had constructed over the past 70 or so years, it was now serving China and Russia and India more than it was serving the US. And that's why they decided to tear up this world order and create a new one. And for that sort of work, you need someone like Trump. And that's why they got Trump into the position that he is right now. And let's see how Trump goes about things. He's right now making a mess of the situation in Iran. And if he doesn't do well, then the next guy can come in and say, you know what, it's all Trump's fault, and let's move forward from there, from wherever we are. So yeah. Pradeep Kumar Roy says, your views about basketball as a sport, full body workout, far better than cricket and also football. Probably it's a super sport. I feel like basketball is a very fast game, and it's a pretty fun game to play. Very, very fast, and yeah, full body workout for sure. Yes, both arms, legs, back, core, shoulders, everything. Yes, it's a full body workout, and Yeah, I think it's a great sport. Better than cricket? Certainly, as a full body workout, you don't get that in cricket. Either you're standing and batting and you sprint a little bit, or you're fielding, waiting for the ball to come to you, or if you're a spinner, then what? So yeah, definitely better than cricket from a full body workout perspective. Football, football is a pretty active game, a pretty active sport. If you play a 90-minute game of football, then you may end up running 10 kilometers as an individual player unless you're substituted. So that also is good. But football doesn't have the upper arm workout that basketball gives you. So I think basketball overall is superior from that perspective. Alvin Rodriguez says, it's a question of our future. Do we need a new minister in charge of the Department of Space in India? And how can private sector contribute? I don't know who's the minister in charge of the Department of Space. I don't think there is a minister in charge for space. I don't know who it comes under. Does it come under the Prime Minister's office? I'm not sure. Look, you can create a new ministry for this, but if there is, see, what we need is a long term 50-year plan of where we want to be in 50 years. By 2100, where do we want to be in the space race? What do we want to have accomplished by 2100? We need to start with that long term vision, and then we can move back, reverse engineer it as to what should we do in the next 5 or 10 years, 5 to 10 years. So you always start with a big vision for 2100 and then work backwards. Ask yourself that if I want to achieve these big goals by 2100, what should I have accomplished by 2050? And if I want to accomplish that by 2050, then what do I need to accomplish by 2030? So you move step by step like that, and you make the plans, and then you have a ministry that implements it and makes sure that this happens. And you have to ensure that you get the right budget and everything else that the Department of Space needs. That's how it's supposed to be done. So simply putting a minister is not going to solve any of the issues. You're going to have to completely revamp the entire way we're doing this. Right now, it looks like space is also something that chalta hai. Okay, we have it. It's nice to have. Let them keep doing something once in a while. That's the kind of approach and attitude we have right now towards space. So the entire approach, attitude, vision, ambition, all of that needs to change. And we don't have a vision, it looks like, first of all. So we need to have a clear vision and goal for 2100 and 2050. And then we can start working forward. That's what needs to happen. Private sector contribute. Yes, certainly the private sector can contribute. We should encourage the private sector to start building rockets, or at least rocket components, spaceship and spacecraft components, motors, and so much more. Yeah, we certainly can have the private sector contribute significantly if we make it easy for the private sector to operate in this sector. Abhijit Singh says, Happy Hanuman Jayanti. Thank you very much. Happy Hanuman Jayanti to you and to all the viewers. Happy Hanuman Jayanti. Prateep Kumar Roy says, Brahmo Samaj, I meant not Brahmos. Oh, okay. Brahmo Samaj. Interesting. All right. Srini KNS says, Trump's posture on Hormuz can weaken petrodollar a lot. Yes, it can. If the US doesn't achieve its objectives in this war, if the out of West Asia, because its military bases are gone, then Iran becomes the predominant hegemon in the region, and it can force all the Gulf nations to do oil transactions in non-US dollar currencies. That can very badly weaken the petrodollar system. Yes. So if Trump is a genius, he should somehow find a way to win this war. Otherwise, it's going to impact the petrodollar significantly if Iran succeeds in surviving this war and coming out as the overall winner. HR devices. Is there a possibility of some Muslims? No, I will not take Hindu-Muslim questions. I'm not taking Hindu-Muslim questions. I don't do it. As a matter of policy on this channel, we don't discuss Hindu-Muslim and all that stuff. There are many channels that do that. This is not the channel for that. Okay, I'm very sorry. Piyush Sinha says, okay, as a new member. Well, thank you very much, Piyushji, and welcome to this channel's membership. Thank you so much. And that is it. That brings me to the end of today's live stream. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you all this weekend. The next live stream will be today is Thursday, Friday, the day after tomorrow, Saturday night, India time. So thank you so much. Keep keep learning, keep asking questions, keep raising your standards. And I shall see you in the next live stream very soon. Until then, take care. Good day, good night. See you soon. Bye bye for now.